order right now at 6:02 p.m. Dr. Thomas, if you would conduct roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis?
Here.
Ms. Gallagher?
Here.
Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Dr. Yeager?
Here.
Dr. Dykeman?
Here.
Dr. Anderson?
Here.
Dr. Gant?
Here.
Attorney Hull?
Here.
And Dr. Maddox?
Here.
Okay, thank you. So we have a quorum. We'll move forward with item 1.3, and that is silent meditation or pledge of allegiance. And so if we would pause for a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move forward with item number 2, which is our recognition of achievements and awards. 2.1 are recognitions. Dr. Thomas.
Yes, ma'am. At this time, I will turn it over to Moore for recognitions.
We're going to start tonight with our district spelling bee. And I know that Lisa is going to put her presentation up as soon as she can.
I'm having issues with sharing my screen. I'm getting an error, so I don't know if you can.
Did you want me to try to do it?
Please, because I'm getting a desktop error when I go get ready to share.
Can you see my screen? Not yet. Yeah.
Is it just the online screen? Let me try.
The presentation that we had specifically for tonight.
Are you able to show your screen just out of curiosity, Dr. Yeager? Yes.
Dr. Yeager, I'm going to share this with you. And you can drive tonight.
She has special favor with Zoom today.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I just shared that with you in your inbox.
Okay. Good grief.
And this child is so cute. We do want to have her face on the screen.
Well, you not see it, Ms. Moore? She had it up already.
Yeah, there we are.
Okay.
Here we are. So as we know, we've had to face some challenges in how to conduct our business as usual. And this year we needed to figure out how to conduct a district-wide virtual spelling bee. On January 26th, 2021, the district spelling bee took place in a brand new remote format that ensured fairness, competition, and equitability for all participants. Jennifer Bogdanovich, the district's gifted coordinator, states, "Our event was as close to an actual in-person spelling bee as could be done safely under the circumstances, and we were able to ensure that every grade and school was able to participate in an exciting competition." Please join me in congratulating Kayla Walker as the winner of this year's district spelling bee. Kayla is a 6th grader in Miss Julie Petway's homeroom at Bernie Harris Lyons Middle School. The winning word was Algiers, spelled A-L-E-R-S. Please join me in congratulating Kayla and wishing her luck in the regional competition. All right, next slide, please, Dr. Yeager. So we have a unique situation this month. We have decided to recognize not one, but 2 employees of the month. It is Evan and Melissa Howell. They are paraprofessionals at Gaines Elementary School. Evan and Melissa are also known as devoted volunteers in our community, and I'd like to share part of the submission entry. When the COVID-19 pandemic first hit the Owls in Howell's into action, helping nutrition staff bag food and load buses, and then rushing to Hillsman to be part of the drive-through service. The tents used at the drive-through sites were donated because the Howells sought out support from area stores. They worked the site every day of the summer. They always arrived early, stayed late, offered to clean, and shared smiling faces with the students. It was a delight to watch kids waving out of a car window when they saw them. It was also a little sad when kids realized they couldn't get out of their car and receive a big Howell hug. One day, a young student walked all the way from his neighborhood to Hillsman to see Miss Howell, and he was sad that she could not hug him, but he told me she cares about me and I love her. Daniel, the principal, states, I've worked with few individuals who are more committed to serving a school community than Evan and Melissa Howell. Whenever I express my appreciation to them for another act of selflessness, the response is always, whatever we can do to serve. And whenever I ask them to participate in or take on an extra task for the school, again, and the response is whatever we can do to serve. Evan is in the back row next to Chef Manny Stone in the red shirt, and Melissa is in the front row with the blue shirt. So please congratulate and thank Evan and Melissa Howell for being our employees of the month. Yay. An assistant tonight to help me with this last presentation, and I'm going to have Dan Smith make sure he puts on his camera and he will continue.
Good evening, Board, Dr. Thomas, and the entire Clark County School District. I'm Dan Smith, Fine Arts, Health, and PE Curriculum Coordinator. Excitement that I'm here to announce that Widespread Panic's Tunes for Tots Foundation has donated $25,000 to be equally divided among all 14 CCSD elementary school music programs for the purchase of instruments and equipment to strengthen and bolster the music education that our elementary students take part in. Widespread Panic believes that art education, and in particular music education, is integral to the overall education and advancement of children. Art allows for personal expression, appreciation of ideas, celebration of cultural awareness, sharing of emotions to life. Widespread Panic agrees with research findings that art education supports more traditional academic subjects, as well as being a worthy pursuit on its own right. Our CCSD elementary music teachers submitted wish lists for items ranging from keyboards and drums, of ukuleles and Orff instruments. The equipment purchased with this generous donation from Widespread Panic's Tunes for Tots will further our efforts in the Clark County School District and our mission of educating the creative and musical facets of the whole child, and will help us maintain a rigorous learning experience to ensure that no matter what we face, the beat goes on. Mm-hmm. As the new instruments arrive, we should listen for a wonderful harmonious sound or a steady beat emanating from every elementary music room in CCSD as we applaud the efforts of our students, the board, our music administrators, staff, our arts and musical communities in Athens, parents and patrons, and all the supporters of music and arts education like Widespread Panic. Thank you for keeping art at the heart of CCSD.
Wow, that's great. Dr. Thomas, that concludes our portion of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Moore and Mr. Dan Smith. We appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exciting. We are very proud of our spelling bee winner. Excited to have her represent Clark County School District at the next level. I have had the pleasure of working with those volunteers, and it was always encouraging just to feel their energy when we were out doing the food pickup at Hillsman. And of course, I'm very thrilled about the opportunity for us to purchase additional equipment for our students through Widespread Panic. So thank you very much for presenting. That concludes this area of our meeting, Dr. Gant.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And congratulations to all of our the individuals that were recognized tonight. So we will move forward with our agenda, and we're at item number 3, which is to amend and or adopt the agenda. Actually, item 3.1 is I am going to open the floor for amending or adopting the agenda.
I would like to propose an amendment to the agenda.
Okay, Mr. Davis.
It is calling for the board to pass a resolution calling for the state of Georgia to prioritize teachers, bus drivers, school and district staff for COVID-19 vaccinations by moving them up to tier 1A.
Okay, and Mr. Davis, you mentioned that you want to seek for an amendment. You would like to be, is your motion that be placed on the agenda for action to be taken on that?
That's correct.
Okay, and is there a second? Mr. Pruitt, you'll have to help me. It's been a while. We were going through a point of amending a lot, but is there a second for amending the agenda for that item?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, I don't have faces in front of me right
I
now.
think Dr. Yeager beat me to it.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Davis and a second by Dr. Yeager. Any discussion or questions about this motion to amend? Okay. Maybe sure. Okay. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll on all in favor of this item. Mr. Davis, just to be clear, this action item, do you want added specifically during a report? Your report, is that my understanding, or do you want it just somewhere else on the
I think appropriately it needs to be somewhere else.
Okay. All right.
I would suggest a new item 12.3 under your action items.
All right. Okay, so 12.3 under the action items. And so that's the motion that's before us. We have a second. There are no questions or further discussion that I see. To take roll for this amendment.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Attorney Hall, and Dr. Maddox.
Dr. Maddox, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that motion passes. Now we'll open the floor for a motion to adopt the agenda if there are no other amendments. To be sure. Okay, we'll open the floor to, Dr. Yeager.
So we need to split out 9.1 into 2 different votes. Are we going to do that at 9.1, or did you want to do that now? The policies that we're voting on.
Mr. Pruitt, can you clarify? Because I think that we could, in our communication, let me go back to that we could ask under 9.1. Oh yeah, they're all together, but we could still ask for them to be, the motion or would then simply be for the ones that we wanted to vote on together, and then we would pull out the ones that we want to vote separately on.
I think so. I think you can split
Okay.
those up when you get there, and just to put the board on notice. So at least one member would like to vote on items 2 and 3 of those 9 items under section 9.1 separately. So in accordance with normal procedure, if even one member without, we'll split those out. So once you come to that, you'll have one motion and vote on items 1 and 4 through 9, and then a second motion and vote on 2 and 3.
Okay, perfect. So just to be clear, we wouldn't need an amendment of the agenda to do that right now.
Correct.
Okay. Dr. Yeager, does that address?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Sure. Okay, we'll open the floor for, are there any other amendments? Okay, we'll open the floor for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Okay, Ms. Davis made a motion.
Second.
Was that Dr. Maddox?
Yes, I keep getting beat.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion made by Ms. Davis and Dr. Maddox with the second to adopt the agenda as amended. Is there any questions? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for us on all of those in favor of adopting the agenda as amended.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Move forward with our agenda that we have before us and as amended. Right now, we'll move forward to our public comment. This is item 4.1. Dr. Dykeman has agreed to help tonight with letters. There are 21 letters are in the folder that Ms. Palmer shares with us, but there was one that could not transfer over to the folder. And so I'll read that one first, but it was submitted appropriately. So I'll read that one first, and then I'll read the first 10, and Dr. Dykeman will read the remaining ones. All right. So the first letter is addressed to Dr. Thomas, the CCSD School Board, Brandon Gaskins, and Cabinet, and it reads, "The teachers and staff of CCSD appreciate the opportunity to continue digital teaching. We hope we will not be required to teach students face-to-face indoors, even under a hybrid model, until we are vaccinated. We look forward to a safe return for all employees, students, and families affected by our return. Sincerely, 95 teachers." And the teachers listed are Brian Ash, Clark Central High School, Brent Andrews, Cedar Shoals High School, Sasha Baker, Clark Middle School, Christian Barner, Clark Central High School, and Amit Ruka, Cedar Shoals High School, Kelly Bivens, Cedar Shoals High School, Michelle Beatty, Bernie Harris Lyons Middle School, Robert Bramlett, Clark Central High School, Anna Bray, Whitehead Road Elementary School, Jody Bogla, Clark Central High School, Stephen Robert Castile, Cedar Shoals High School, Carly Chandler, Cedar Shoals High School, Grace Crumpton, Clark Central High School, Lindsay Coleman Taylor, Clark Central High School, Jay Domingo Central High School, Emily Cosley, Clark Central High School, Marie Eskridge, Coyle Middle School, Jesse Evans, Cedar Shoals High School, Sayward Evans, Whitehead Road Elementary School, Aaron Farnham, Cedar Shoals High School, Jennifer Fishburne, Clark Middle School, Rita Portage, Barrow Elementary School, Logan Garrett, Cedar Shoals High School, Lori Garrett Hatfield, Cleveland Road Elementary School, Barbara Hick, Hillsman Middle School, Jeff Gerenser, Cedar Shoals High School, Ariel Gordon, Cedar Shoals High School, Mark Ginsberg, Cedar Shoals High School, Charles Hardy, President of the Athens Alliance Coalition Incorporated, Heidi Hensley, Hillsman Middle School, Tanya Herbert, Oglethorpe Avenue Elementary School, Julie Hinkle, Oglethorpe Avenue Elementary School, Eric Hopkins, Cedar Shoals High School, Aaron Horton, Clark Central High School, Cedar Shoals High School, Tanya Hudson, Chase Street Elementary School, Joshua Sampson, Cedar Shoals High School, Pamela Sons, Guerrero, Cedar Shoals High School, Sean Simpson, Clark Middle School, Antoine Stevens, former school board member, Terry Jensen, Whit Davis Elementary School, Catherine Johnson, High School, Laura Lee Johnson, Cedar Shoals High School, Peggy Johnson, Cedar Shoals High School, Valerie Joyce, Whitehead Road Elementary School, Lauren Knowlton, Whit Davis Elementary School, Sarah Lowing, Chase Street Elementary School, Marcy Manglitz, Oglethorpe Avenue Elementary School, Joey Merrow, Bernie Harris Lyons Middle School, Sheena Mason, Cedar Shoals High School, Cheryl Makinson, Cedar Shoals High School, Karen McDonald, Whit Davis Elementary School, Megan McNeely, Clark Central High School, Beth Mendenhall, Cedar Shoals High School, Rosemary Millsap, Cedar Shoals High School, Ashley Morgan, Whit Davis Elementary School, Jamie Maumeyer, Clark Middle School, Laura Minutsko, Avenue Elementary School, Grant Morrow, Cedar Shoals High School, Megan Thorpe Avenue Elementary School, Josh Nismith, Clark Middle School, Brendan Nordgren, Cedar Shoals High School, Megan Orton, Cedar Shoals High School, Bridget Hall, Cedar Shoals High School, Chandra Powers, Coyle Middle School, Melanie Powers, Whitehead Road Elementary School, Amanda Price, Clark Central High School, Corey Pringle, Clark Central High School, David Ragsdale, Clark Central High School, Evelyn Rushing, Whit Davis Elementary School, Lauren Roy, Whit Davis Elementary, Stephen Sacco, W.R. Coyle Middle School, Natalie Sanders, Chase Street Elementary School, Caroline Savini, Stroud Elementary School, Ada Isabel Scarano, Alps Road Elementary School, Jennifer Schmidt, Cedar Shoals High School, Elliott Slane, Clark Central High School, Emmanuel Stone, Athens Community Career Academy, Ginger Stickney, Bernie Harris Lyons Middle School, Cynthia Stevens, Office of Early Learning, Chris Suguchi, Chase Street School, Halo Smart, ACCA, Shannon Thompson, Cleveland Road Elementary School, Ashley Walker, Cedar Shoals High School, Elaine Jarnigan, Alps Road Elementary School, Jennifer Jackson Whitley, Athens Community Career Academy, Mary Claire Mixon, Cedar Shoals High School, Tracy View, Oglethorpe Elementary School, Erica Wade, Cedar Shoals High School, Amy Walker, Whit Davis Elementary, Vanessa Witcher, Clark Central High School, Amy Walden, Clark Middle School, Diane Wehunt, Oglethorpe Avenue Elementary School, Chris Woodward, Clark Middle School, and Lauren Wood, Hillsman Middle School. And Ms. Palmer, I'm not sure if the timer is up, but I'm unable to see it. Or
I can't share my screen for some reason,
Gotcha.
so I was trying to tell you, but I know you can't see the chat and read that. So I don't know if someone wants to put a timer up for the next group.
if they could put a timer up or just say time, and I'll know to stop, but I just didn't want to, I figured I had went over, but I couldn't quite switch screens. So
I'll have you just say time if that's what you want.
okay, that would be perfect. Thank you. Okay. So our next letter is from Alice Willman, and it reads, Dear Dr. Thomas and School Board, I cannot tell you how grateful I am that you are working so hard to secure a safe face-to-face hybrid option for CCSD this spring. I know you will face resistance to this, but I hope you can stay the course. I am the parent of a sophomore at Clark Central who, like so many others, has struggled immensely to stay motivated through virtual learning. When I went to tell him last night that you were considering a hybrid option for high school come March, he was on FaceTime with his friends. I wish you could have heard the laughing and celebrating this news. These students desperately want to be in school. Thank you for working to make it happen. Please let me know what I can do as a parent to support your decision and its implementation. All the best, Alice Willman. Okay. This next letter is from Amanda Price, and it reads, Dear CCSD board members, I appreciate all that you do in the decision-making process for our schools, especially during this extended pandemic. Given that the district recently communicated a desire to reopen by mid-February in tandem with the continued prevalence of various standardized tests and virtual learning in a pandemic, I felt I needed to speak for the needs of our students. I ask that when CCSD does make a return to safe in-person learning, we do so with a schedule and framework that includes electives and connections classes equally to the required academics. While I speak as a high school teacher, this request applies to all grades. Several times this pandemic, the core subjects have been emphasized. I find the distinction between core and non-core potentially problematic, especially given the connotations implied with those terms. The language used in the Every Student Succeeds Act replaces core subjects with a well-rounded education, which includes courses such as fine arts, CTAE, world languages, and physical education. Therefore, these classes are considered core classes in the sense that they are required to graduate. The only distinction is that students have choice within their greater category to fit their electives courses to their interests. Take a moment to reflect on what has given you a bit of reprieve during the pandemic. Perhaps it's gardening or music, making art, watching movies, reading, regular daily. All of these are possible because of the content covered in electives. Our electives classes are what are going to help our students reconnect to themselves, their community, and process the experience of this pandemic. I know I don't have to list the many advantages of participating in art making, in creative writing, in organizations like Future Farmers of America, FFA, in life improving physical education, PE classes, or in career prep, especially now. You are probably well aware of the benefits of these classes and organizations. All of these classes provide our students with authentic learning, community, and the much needed social emotional learning. These are the subjects that are in essence going to be life-giving, especially in our current circumstances. When our students physically return to our schools, we need to ensure we are communicating to them that they matter, their interests, their learning, their future, and not just communicate that their test scores are the main concern. We can do that by making sure the schedule includes electives as an equal priority. After all, we all just want to do what's best for kids. Okay? That was from Amanda Price. This next letter is from Amy Bramlett, and it reads, Dear Superintendent Thomas and members of the board, thank you for your attention to the safety of students and staff in regards to the return to in-person learning. Please get good HEPA air purifiers, classroom, and for the lunchrooms. They are a great non-invasive way to mitigate virus spread indoors for all. I know that several parents have purchased these devices for their children's classrooms, but as we all know, this is not possible financially for many families in our district. And once again, this sets us up in an inequitable situation with lower income populations of students disproportionately experiencing less safety. Please let's make all classrooms safer for all students and teachers with this simple solution. Thank you, Amy Bramlett, Street, Athens, Georgia, 30601, parent of CCSD fourth grader. Okay, this next letter is from Anna Coppage. It reads, "Dear board members, I am thankful that after continual punting of the reopening of the elementary schools in our district, we are finally close to that happening. A few items I would like to be addressed and reviewed by the board. Please reconsider the Wednesday virtual option. Having this disruption midweek will only exacerbate the issues students are having with lack of routine and schedule. This will increase the risk of COVID exposure to our students because most working parents will need to find childcare for that Wednesday or for their students. Most babysitters who will have had their own exposure to COVID will then be around our district students. This is an unnecessary exposure and risk. Most childcare individuals will be college students who are on campus and around friends. Again, this opens us up to unnecessary exposure than if we had just continued on a 5-day face-to-face plan. Please reconsider the Wednesday virtual and try to make it a 5-day face. 2, please consider canceling spring break this year. UGA already had the foresight to make this call last semester after immediately entering the classroom for face-to-face and then a few weeks after having a week off. Makes absolutely no sense. As this board made several changes last minute, this is not unprecedented and expectation. Canceling a week where people might travel and expose themselves to COVID will only help our long-term vision to have these students in face-to-face instruction. We risk the COVID numbers rising immediately after this spring break. Please cancel spring break and just continue face-to-face instruction. Thank you, Anna Kopich. Okay. This letter is from Ashley Walker, and it reads, "The bare minimum, as public school teachers across the country know, this is the standard. Teachers and students are provided the bare minimum of tools and resources on a regular basis. Outdated textbooks, if any, 500 copies a month for 125 students, broken desks, bookshelves, missing shelves and brackets, broken soap dispensers in the bathrooms, cockroaches around the microwaves in the teacher's workroom, moldy ceiling tiles from leaks in the race instead of the leaks getting fixed, little to no access to counselors, social workers stretched thin, 72 kids to a bus, broken HVAC units, and in general, putting Band-Aids on major structural issues. We know these are unfortunate parts of the job. Teachers, admin, and staff often compensate for these deficiencies, that our students deserve better than the bare minimum. The bare minimum, this is what teachers fear in a global pandemic. We know this is the standard and we can't compensate for it this time. The bare minimum means schools close down as quickly as they open. The bare minimum means our colleagues across the country get sick, are hospitalized, and die. We ask the school district to step up and provide reopening plans that go above the bare minimum. Provide air purifiers, which we have requested and been denied. Provide N95 masks to all staff and students. Provide outdoor spaces for teachers to hold class. Provide a regular COVID testing protocol. Provide 2 doses of the vaccine before staff and students are required to go back face-to-face. Provide more than the bare minimum. This pandemic has revealed the problems of accepting the bare minimum for our children's education. 2, our kids have laptops but no textbooks and struggle to read, type, and use their devices. So let's get e-textbooks and include computer instruction as a special in elementary school or an elective in middle school. Our kids have laptops but no internet access at home. Let's work with the county to ensure this is never a problem again. Let's put in place grading policies that are actually based on research around equitable learning. Let's provide high quality professional development opportunities that include the latest research in content areas and in anti-racist pedagogy. Let's really name what we mean by equity instead of just throwing the term around, because the latter is bare minimum. I don't just fear the bare minimum because of this pandemic. I fear the overwhelming acceptance of the bare minimum for our kids. When I think of each one of them, I see the undeniable potential that we should be building up instead of beating down with a barrage of biased standardized tests that consistently mark them as failures. Standards are the bare minimum, and the bare minimum approach is failing them. We are failing them. Let's rise above the bare minimum education CCSD is providing and use this tragedy as an opportunity to create a different standard for our children's educations. Ashley Walker, 14-year teaching veteran, mother of 3 CCSD students. This letter is from Beth Mendenhall, and it reads, greetings. As a teacher new to this district, I have been proud and relieved to belong to a school system that values science as well as the safety of its greatest asset, its employees. Because other districts responded to political, economic, and social pressures, many of my teaching friends across the country were forced to compromise their health and the safety of their students and awkwardly tried to manage teaching online and in person simultaneously. I felt fortunate to have chosen a school district that wisely chose distant learning and took the extra step of delaying the start of school to allow faculty to prepare for quality instruction. The health data does not indicate now is the time to rip the face learning. And while the communication on what this model will look like has not been clear, it appears we are being asked to teach in person and online simultaneously. Not only does this endanger the health of teachers and students involved, but it diminishes the quality of both the in-person and online learning. Sadly, students and their families are being encouraged to commit to this without being fully informed. In addition, this change and having to pivot is disruptive to the routine we have established and further traumatizes our students who are doing their best to adjust to living and learning during the pandemic. I sincerely reconsider this plan and return to valuing science and your faculty. Warmly, Beth Mendenhall. This is from Caroline Sharkey, and it reads, good afternoon. While there are much more concerning and pressing things, I wanted to comment on the proposed working 2021-2022 school calendar that was discussed at the 2-4 work session. Again, the proposed spring break is being marked for April. CCSD has aligned its calendar with UGA's academic calendar for many years, with UGA acting as one of the largest employers in the district. A group of parents asked to have the dates moved specifically because April is a warmer month for vacation. This is upsetting. CCSD families consist of many low-income parents and guardians, of which a fair number work as staff at UGA. Aligning spring breaks in March is more than the luxury of having a vacation. It affords some parents the ability to have reduced hours or time off during the only part of the spring semester with time flexibility and with decreased penalty because of UGA students being on break. Hall, staff, facilities, and cleaning staff that are otherwise disallowed time off to be with their kids, or at the very least, have more flexibility to get their kids to area camps or alternative settings during that shared week off. The move to April has frustrated parents, and the ones I talked to have expressed, again, feeling disregarded by CCSD in lieu of the needs of more affluent parents. Not to mention, this means a long period of time, the first week of January until the first week of April, with no significant break, only to be followed by milestone testing. As a social worker, my work is consistently about addressing issues of equity. And I ask that the board reconsider this calendar with the consideration that for many parents and guardians in the district, a warm place to vacation is not a reality. Sincerely, Caroline Sharkey, LCSW. All right. And this is from Bishop, and it reads, Dear Dr. Thomas and the board, at the February 4th board work session, Nurse Rourke updated us on Clark County's COVID numbers. She reported the following. 1, there has been a downward trend, but we are still at a critically high number of cases. At the time of the meeting, we were at 710 cases per 100,000. Ideally, we want our cases to be our cases per 100,000 to be less than 200 for a full return to face-to-face. 2, our positivity rate at the time of the meeting was 10%. Ideally, we want that positivity rate to be under 5% for a safe return to in-person learning. 3, our region's ICU bed usage is at 98.8%, a critically high number. 4, while teachers are to be included in phase 1B of the Georgia's vaccination rollout, we are currently in phase 1A+. I don't know when CCSD teachers will get vaccinated at this time, and the supply chain issue in Georgia is a barrier. Immediately following Nurse Rourke's presentation, Mr. Gaskins told us that the schools will be opening back up for face-to-face instruction starting February 15th. This announcement seems to contradict everything we heard from Nurse Rourke. Our numbers and positivity rate are still dangerously high. Our hospitals are full. Most of our teachers have not been vaccinated, and we don't know when they will be. I appreciate that CCSD is ready to vaccinate when supply becomes available, and that Nurse Rourke is looking into testing for the CCSD community. But it doesn't appear that either of those things are happening before we go back face-to-face. Why is it safe for students and staff to return to face-to-face instruction now? Or are we sending our students and staff back in person, even though it clearly isn't safe? If vaccination of teachers is a necessary effort for a safe return to school, why aren't we waiting for teachers to be vaccinated? I know that CCSD is working hard to mitigate spread, but schools are not a magical place where COVID isn't transmissible. We shouldn't put our students and staff at risk like this. Please consider staying virtual until our teachers can be vaccinated in order to protect our community. Our district has helped to keep our community safe during this pandemic. Let's not stop now when we are so close to a safer environment for everyone. Carrie Bishop, CCSD parent. This next letter is from Kathy Rumfelt, and it reads, Dear Dr. Thomas and School Board, after watching the work session last week, it became clear to me that CCSD is determined to bring students back in person, in spite of all the data showing that the COVID rate in Athens is still critically high. If we must bring staff and students back in this unsafe environment, the district must do everything possible to mitigate the spread of COVID. This should include air purifiers for every CCSD school. We know that COVID is primarily spread through respiratory droplets and through some smaller droplets and particles that can remain airborne for minutes or even hours. When people are inside together for extended periods of time, like in schools, these airborne particles are of particular concern. Transmission can occur between people who are more than 6 feet apart since the aerosols move randomly throughout the room. It's also important to remember that what we currently know about COVID is based on the original strain, and now new variants are emerging. According to CDC, new COVID variants seem to spread more easily and quickly than other variants. In our schools, some classrooms don't have windows or have windows that don't open. If students are eating indoors with their classmates, this is likely the riskiest thing they do at school all day with regards to contracting COVID. Teachers and staff will also potentially be exposed during this time. We know that universal use of face masks in classrooms reduces aerosol exposure. Recent research has also shown that correctly sized HEPA air cleaners, /purifiers can also reduce exposure by 40%. The combination of face masks and portable air cleaners reduces aerosol by 80 to 90% at a very low cost. At last week's work session, Mr. Gaskin stated, "We have the money and we have opened our doors to say, tell us what you need and we'll get it for you." Air purifiers should be required in every classroom and cafeteria. If this in-person return must happen and the district has money, spend it on evidence-based mitigation strategies to protect the CCSD community. Kathy Rumpelt, CCSD parent. And this letter is from Duda Bensasson, and it reads, "I am on support for air purifiers in all CCSD classrooms and cafeterias. I strongly believe they reduce the chance of COVID transmission and have purchased my own for use in workspaces. I hope CCSD will do everything they can to protect children, teachers, and their families in this way. Duda Bensasson." And that concludes my letters. I'll turn it over to Dr. Dykman.
Okay. This first letter is from Kathy Erickson. Concerns about reopening schools prior to vaccinations. We shouldn't do it. While we all agree that students learn best when in school, the Board of Education cannot in good conscience ask teachers and students to risk their lives and the lives of their loved ones when it is unclear that the Clark County School District has taken all of the necessary and reported precautions that increase but in no way guarantee the safety of all stakeholders. We cannot return to school while the buildings do not offer the level of ventilation outlined in CDC guidelines, which includes fans, repositioning outdoor air hampers and diffusers, the use of HEPA filters, and keeping windows open. At Clark Central High School, proper ventilation simply isn't possible. After the latest SPLOST, our buildings were constructed to have windows that do not open. Safety is impossible without proper ventilation. A recent Johns Hopkins cases are falling, why, warns us to have hope, but don't let down your guard. While what we are doing to limit viral spread is working, epidemiologist David Dowdy contends, we can't rapidly go back to life as normal because we would see yet another wave of spread. Indeed, even though we may be seeing herd effects, it doesn't mean that most of the population is immune, Dowdy wrote. People are still very susceptible to and dying of this virus. Has the district considered doing rapid tests on at least 2/3 of the school population on any given day? Another school district has had some peace of mind with this effort, and positive cases have been exposed every single time that these have been conducted. The new strain spreading and potentially spreading in Georgia, reopening now without vaccines and necessary precautions before the updated CDC guidelines are shared feels like a poor decision in terms of public health. These new strands are multiplying rapidly, and after the Super Bowl gathering results, we will see an increase in the community with cases which then direct schools reopenings because of the upward surge. It's also concerning to me that CDC hasn't yet announced their update for school reopening, at least the last time I checked the news. Yet we're pushing families to decide on virtual or in-person by the end of this week. We've seen data on the residual effects of people who have contracted. They could and have had long-term organ damage. We must not forfeit the health and possibly the lives of members of the CCSD family when the promise of a vaccine is so close. Our students are keeping themselves and their families safe. They are in a routine. Breaking the routine and starting up a new one will take time to implement new norms. Most students with whom I've spoken to are misled. They think that returning to school will be completely normal and with no restrictions. Is the Clark County School District prepared to address the community or families when someone dies from the virus due to our haste to reopen? Catherine Kelly Erickson, ELL teacher, CCHS soccer program coordinator, mock trial team coach. The next letter is from Erin Horton. It reads, to Dr. Zernona Thomas, CCSD School Board, Brandon Gaskins, and Cabinet. I am a teacher in Clark County at the high school level and have been observing the decisions and actions taken by the district about the ways in which to conduct education this school year. I would first like to commend you on choosing to keep us virtual for so long in an effort to keep everyone safe and as healthy as possible this school year. Obviously, there have been factors out of our control. However, you can't argue that when we are virtual, more people are staying uninfected and ultimately alive. There has also been great effort among the district and among our school to find digital tools that are useful for us. And I hope you appreciate the ways that your educators have found ways to make learning still meaningful and to make use of these tools throughout our virtual spaces. However, this recent news about returning everyone face-to-face over the next month with the intention of finishing out the school year face-to-face is misguided. There are many reasons why this decision needs heavy reconsideration, but I will cover a few in this letter. First and foremost, as this is most likely something you have been fielding over the past week, is the sheer amount of confusion about this decision and the plan itself. Much of the information being sent out is inconsistent, convoluted. Even as teachers may begin to get a grasp on what we are expected to do every day, there will still be considerable confusion for students about when, where to return, even before we start discussing safety protocols. I wasn't even aware until today, 2/10, that students would be 15th instead of the 22nd, and there is no clear rationale for that choice or others. The alternating phases alone will disrupt a lot of the routine that students have had this year, and routine is precious for people during traumatic periods. It will expend more energy than any of us have to phase into a 5-day schedule, if we even get that far into the reopening plan. An insurmountable issue is, of course, safety precautions. I know that epidemiologists from UGA have been in contact with the board advising against the return because the cases in Athens, let alone Georgia and the US, are not at low enough levels to consider face-to-face instruction on the short or long term. These epidemiologists will have more information and statistics to support the argument, so I hope that you turn to them for more feedback. I am still left wondering several things about this choice when it comes to safety. I am wondering why, when the CDC advises that people wear not masks when they go out, that you are requiring us to return. I wonder why, when teachers are not yet allowed to be vaccinated in order to at least allow us a chance of finishing this year in okay health, that you are requiring us to return. Did you say time, Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Okay. This next one is from Dr. Jody Turner. To the Board of Education representing the Clark County School District. As both a parent of a child within CCSD, Timothy Road Elementary, and family physician serving the children and families of Athens and the surrounding area, I write to you pleading for consideration of immediate return to in-person instruction for the children within our school district. I and many other providers within the community are seeing in our practices the mental health devastation for the children in Clark County schools, as well as the loss of productivity of their parents who need to or must work and strain to balance this with appropriate childcare. I and many parents can make alternate arrangements to have others assist with online instruction, but many, especially the minority populations and high-risk children throughout our community, cannot and are falling behind academically, suffering neglect, being placed in less safe conditions during school hours, and I am personally witnessing the mental health distress of these students, as well as the utter strain on the mental health providers in our community to attempt to support the few who can get appropriately connected. I understand there are concerns for both staff and student safety regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, but it no longer appears data-driven to remain away from in-person instruction. There is myriad data now from around the nation that returning to in-person instruction with the standard safety recommendations from the CDC without the need for modified attendance schedules does not increase the risk of viral spread throughout the community. In fact, both in education and healthcare settings, it has now been shown that working within these environments does not increase the risk of COVID-19 infection. Rather, the highest risk for individuals working in these environments is by far their other social and community interactions. Thus, returning to schools does not place teachers and staff at higher risk as long as they follow appropriate CDC safety guidelines. My fear, therefore, which is being supported by numerous mental health providers I have interacted with throughout the community, as well as the limited data thus far available nationally, is that innumerably more students will suffer devastating mental health consequences than we will see individuals die from the virus itself. Reporting of mental health related data naturally has a much longer delay than COVID-19 data reporting, so we will not know the full effects to our children for likely several years. But I have never before seen so many children and adolescents with suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, severe depression, debilitating anxiety, and my psychoactive medication prescribing for children has dramatically increased to try and support them, especially as the delay for appropriate psychiatric therapy is reaching weeks and months due to the overstressed nature of our local mental health providers. Okay. The next letter is from Catherine Baker Johnson. Hello, friends, board members, and cabinet. I have taught at Cedar Shoals since 2013 under 5 different principals and now 4 superintendents. Despite the chaos and trauma of this district, the East Side community feels like family to me, and I thought I would dedicate my life to serve there on the roller coaster. Imagine my shock when I found out last week I had to file for childcare hardship leave under the CARES Act and receive 2/3 pay starting March 8th. You do realize when you force working moms to report to work almost a month before middle schools in the county are open, you are effectively sending a message to moms who are teachers that they are not valued or protected in this pandemic. Moms are not burnt out. We are betrayed, and many of us had 2 weeks to find someone to watch our children. The district is deciding to shock and destabilize mid-semester the only part of the CCSD that is stable, its teacher force. Despite the turnover of the district office or administrators who come and go, almost every person in my English department student taught and then taught at Cedar Shoals for more than 15 years. 2 of the English teachers who have taught for more than 20 years in my building also attended Cedar Shoals as high schoolers. The same goes for a math teacher and a social studies teacher who graduated from Cedar Shoals and returned to teach. The educators of this district are rock solid and know what matters in teaching, even when the district circled through new, prepackaged, expensive curriculum every 3 years, whether it be IB, iReady, Avid, or PLC Plus, without surveying us to ask our student needs. Imagine the surprise of my 55 students when they may soon realize they'll have to have a long-term sub in their course for over a month and a half, so the board and cabinet can force a rushed face-to-face option just a month before we will likely be vaccinated. Could I teach my class from home and we continue to have an enriching year? Yes, but it seems members of this cabinet are more concerned with giving seniors their spring experience, when we all know there will be nothing magical or normal about the next 2.5 months. Cabinet, you seem surprised when board members asked you last week about outside classrooms when the commissioners offered to pay for them, in September. You continue to talk about the weather every time it is brought up, as if Athens didn't use tents as the exact solution in the 1919 Spanish flu pandemic. Please consider surveying your teachers and not always deferring to new administrators. There is little trust built between administrator and teachers, just as there has been little trust built between the district office and teachers. Outdoor classrooms are one of our #1 requests. Give each school $2,000 to purchase at least picnic tables, if not tents. It is not too late to provide the finances for outdoor classrooms and for you to mandate their use, just like you mandated iReady. The next letter is from Lee Elkins. Dr. Thomas, Dr. Gant, and members of the board, I appreciate the CCSD staff and calendar committee who put effort into creating the 21-22 academic calendar. I understand that it is a balancing act, trying to maximize days in the classroom and reduce random days out. However, this calendar as presented during the February 4th board work session seems less than ideal. I'll begin with several questions. Why are we starting so early? Why are we making Labor Day a 4-day weekend? And why is winter break 21 days long? In a district with extraordinary food insecurity issues facing many of its families, it seems that such an extended break may unintentionally create more problems than it solves. I find that frustration with this calendar increases as we move to the second half of the year and the decision to once again disconnect CCSD's spring break week from UGA's spring break week. I think it is worth revisiting how this disconnection was initially made. On May 17th, 2020, after schools had been shuttered for the year, after we'd muddled at virtual learning, and while we were all wondering how to navigate the pandemic and wondering how long it would last, the CCSD community newsletter was sent out via email. On the bottom of that newsletter was a survey link, specifically regarding the time frame for spring break. In the midst of the pandemic, why were we at all concerned about adjusting spring break on the already approved academic calendar for the next year? Why? The text of the survey told us, the district has received feedback from some stakeholders who would like this break to be held later, early April, for example. I'm curious who were these stakeholders who provided this feedback. Was this solicited or unsolicited feedback? Was there a specific forum for this discussion, or did a few folks just call up and ask for spring break to be moved? The survey also notes that in recent years, the district's spring break has been aligned with the University of Georgia. We have been a part of CCSD for 5 years, and this is the first year that spring break isn't aligned, though UGA wisely canceled their break. I do wonder, when was the last time it wasn't aligned? Why does this matter? The University of Georgia is the largest employer in Athens, and while it is not the only employer in Athens, it is one of 2 public institutions based in Athens, with Athens Tech being the other, that offer a spring break to its students. Those 2 institutions have concurrent spring breaks. Importantly, some of those students are parents of CCSD students and rely on that calendar coordination. Some of those who are employees of either institution find it easier to take leave when their students are out, and indeed some academic faculty don't earn annual leave and are encouraged to use student holidays as their time off. One of the real benefits, at least until now, of living in Clark County was the coordination of breaks. I think I'm past the time there. So long letters today. Okay, so the next one is from Mark Ginsburg. I have taught here 15 years defending the system from misinformed perceptions. The pandemic offers similar lessons in perspective. If something is not ideal, is it automatically bad? Were other creative solutions explored? What drives our decisions? I am disappointed that the fetish for so-called face-to-face or in-person learning has reached Athens. My experience as an educator has not been heard throughout an age-old tale about teaching. I'm grateful for teaching online, but the decisions that make virtual school unsustainable could be better informed by teachers. With vaccine eligibility imminent, teachers' perspectives don't matter. Last week, one board member asked, "What's different about our staff?" The bias saddens me. Maybe I should thank her because I've concluded that we are very different. How? I choose to work here because I enjoy it. I didn't enjoy every aspect of an apparent rape cover-up 5 years ago, but I stuck around. It was not easy to be proud of CCSD. Next, through 4 principals, one of them twice. More than normalcy, I crave continuity. This year has been more challenging than those 5 combined. Teaching became secondary to being there for students, and I'm no counselor. It's not ideal, but it beats riding the COVID-19 carousel in a hotspot county that could not keep schools open a full month. Perspective matters. Objectively, few other systems in Georgia have acknowledged the pandemic's realities. I'm grateful that I was not forced to choose between my job and my immune-compromised fiance's health until now, with a quarter of the school year remaining and vaccination imminent. So we are different in some regards. We did better than most, but I expect better every day. An extra month of patience will maximize resources while preserving funds for the pandemic's consequences. While vaccine availability remains uncertain, we know the virus spread rapidly in our schools. While the numbers improve, reality will not change. The systematic goal has shifted to reopen schools despite evidence that it hasn't worked out here. During the same meeting, other voices praised our system's transparency. Are we planning to break weekly COVID-19 data down by individual schools, as other systems have done, or are we content to be less transparent? 290 students and staff tested positive since August, the majority after November 8th. How many failed to report positive tests? These procedures remain unclear. How many more would have tested positive with schools even partially open? How many more will test positive before we're better protected? Is it worth risking a single death or fewer instructional hours to say we're open? These are more important questions to consider. COVID-19 doesn't care what makes us different. A better question would be, what do the teachers actually think? Mark Ginsburg, Cedar Shoals High School. The next letter is from Mark Ebel. To whom it may concern, I am a family physician and professor of epidemiology at the University of Georgia. I speak here in my capacity as a citizen of Athens-Clarke County and do not represent the views of my college or university. 1, current levels of new cases in Clarke County are high. As of February 7th, the 7-day running average of new cases is 34 per 100,000 per day. This corresponds to 476 new cases per 100,000 per 14 days. And then he gives a link. 2, the CDC provides guidance for returning to in-person instruction. Note that the highest category is over 200 new cases per 100,000 over 14 days. And then a link to the CDC indicators. 3, at this point, it seems very risky to return to in-person instruction, especially for older students, K-8 to 12, and for more vulnerable faculty and staff. 4, if the decision is made to return to in-person instruction against this advice, teachers and staff at increased risk for severe disease should not be in the classroom with students. This includes anyone 50 years and older and anyone of any age with asthma, heart disease, chronic lung disease, morbid obesity, or chronic kidney disease. 5, if the decision is made to return to in-person instruction against this advice, students should be required to 1, have a negative test for COVID-19 prior to return to in-person instruction, and ideally every week after that. 2, wear masks and socially distance. And 3, staff and faculty should be required to wear a KN95 mask and optionally a face shield. Best, Mark H. Ebel, MD, MS, College of Public Health, Professor of Epidemiology. This letter is from Rebecca Marshall. Please include air purifiers in all CCSD classrooms and lunchrooms for our children's and teachers' health. Scientific articles have demonstrated that the airborne nature of COVID can be mitigated with air purification. I'm a CCSD parent of 2 kids and would love to have them safely in person at school again. Thank you, Rebecca Marshall. And this one is from the Teacher Advisory Board. When speaking on standardized testing during a pandemic, I have to be completely candid with my thoughts on this decision. It is disappointing, shows a complete disconnect with the realities of the classroom, and will be a detriment to public education. Although the Teacher Advisory Board agrees with this statement, these words are not ours, but those of Georgia's State Superintendent, Richard Woods. Continuing to administer high-stakes tests during these unprecedented and uncertain times is, sadly, more about adults than the needs of students and teachers. Those who push the rhetoric about moving forward with high-stakes summative testing during a pandemic show total disregard for the realities faced by our families, students, and educators. Once again, the words of Richard Woods. Make no mistake, these test scores will not be used to support teaching and learning, as the proponents suggest. They will be used to undermine our public education system, understate the heroic efforts of our, undercut any opportunity we have for a full K-12 recovery. Yet again, the words of Richard Woods. We are facing a pandemic which continues to rage. Much of this is beyond our control, but one thing rings clear. Our students need our support. They need us to teach them with engaging learning activities, listen when they voice their fears, check in with them when we notice they are struggling, and advocate for their best interests. Standardized testing during a deadly and stressful pandemic is not in students' best interest. When administered virtually, testing platforms are more likely to cause students stress, less likely to secure student participation, and less likely to gather accurate or useful data. Although interims and iReady are not required by our state or nation, CCSD continues to implement them, and they are causing students to lose valuable social and emotional learning time. The Teacher Advisory Board asks that CCSD accept the recommendation of the Virtual Attendance Grading and Assessment Cross-Functional Team, which states, the team recommends putting a hold on district interim assessments given at home. Instead, the team recommends the use of performance-based assessments during this time of virtual learning. Also, the use of writing-based assessments will provide information on levels of mastery. We end this letter with the words of Richard Woods. To our districts, families, educators, and students, don't worry about the tests. Given the unique environment we are in, neither valid nor reliable measures of academic progress or achievement. I repeat, do not worry about the tests. Worry about meeting the students and teachers where they are. Worry about a safe and supportive restart. Worry about the well-being of your students and teachers. Worry about doing what's right. Thank you, the Teacher Advisory Board. This letter is from Vicki McMakin. Dear Dr. Thomas and CCSD Board, as we prepare for CCSD to bring students, teachers, and staff back into our buildings, I am writing to urge you to invest in and formalize mitigation strategies based on the most up-to-date guidance available. Since March, we have learned a lot about the virus and how it spreads. We know now that universal masking, physical distancing, and improved ventilation are the keys to preventing spread. We know that when these three strategies are implemented in the community, spread is low, schools can be a safe environment for our students and teachers. Unfortunately, the community spread of COVID-19 in Clark County is not low, and it will likely remain high without stronger efforts from our state leadership to reduce the level of virus in our community. Additionally, we know that the transmissible B.1.1.7 variant, which originated in Britain, is already circulating in Georgia and is predicted to become the prevalent strain. Variants which originated in Brazil and South Africa will undoubtedly also make their way to Georgia. All this to say that you are faced with a high community spread and more transmissible variants on the horizon. I am writing to urge you to do everything you can to implement the strongest masking, physical distancing, and improved ventilation strategies at your disposal. Adequately sized portable HEPA air cleaners should be installed in all CCSD classrooms and cafeterias. These air cleaners are proven to remove virus particles from the air. When sized correctly, they can increase the number of clean air changes per hour to a safe level. When combined with universal masking, they have been shown to reduce particle exposure by 80 to 90%. Theirs are inexpensive and easy to use. You just plug them in and turn them off. Thank you for your consideration, Vicki McMakin. And I believe this one is my last one, but somebody can double check to make sure after this. This is from Chris Woodward. I appreciate the caution our district has exercised most of this school year. By comparison to surrounding counties, we have demonstrated unequaled concern for our community. Many of these other districts have rejected CDC guidelines, refusing to require masks, refusing to quarantine teachers who are in close, and discouraging COVID testing in an effort to keep the case numbers down. Within this context, there is no doubt that CCSD has exercised far more caution than our surrounding counties. Additionally, I understand the deep desire to return to in-person instruction. I don't know of any teachers who believe that virtual instruction for all kids. I don't know of any teachers who do not miss working with students in person. In speaking about the plan to move forward with in-person instruction, teacher concerns were dismissed as obstacles to meeting student needs. Avoiding engagement with teachers was painted as prioritizing children, a common theme in October as well. This refrain of pitting educators against students is to the benefit of none, and is accentuated by the absence of true engagement with teachers. This is distracting and divisive. I do not question the decision-making authority of district leadership, even as I wish for less insolence, but I take exception with language drawn to confuse and misappropriate legitimate concerns. I did not hear a call to prioritize children the last time we returned to in-person instruction, when the decision was made to shut off meal deliveries to elementary, middle, and high school families who stayed virtual. I have not heard the true call around student needs when it comes to testing and assessment. While there are some mandated high-stakes tests, district leadership has elected to add additional assessments. Our district has made this choice despite strong communication from Georgia State Superintendent Woods, such as his statement that performance data points at this time are nor reliable measures of academic progress or achievement. When community members, parents, and teachers have asked for non-traditional approaches this year, such as pursuing public pods, allowing teachers to volunteer to teach in person in high-need areas, and employing a needs-based approach to inviting students to schools, these requests have all been made in order to prioritize student needs. The silence from district leadership has not, it could be argued, been an indication of prioritizing children. Any number of decisions, including the ones mentioned above, could be painted as district leadership working against the needs of children. This would be a mistake and would betray the dedication and devotion of leadership to our community and children. Likewise, is it a malfeasance to ignore the dedication and commitment of teachers as a matter of rhetorical convenience? We demonstrate common purpose through our actions and words. I consider language that serves to asperse the concerns of teachers. Additionally, I ask for more engagement with parents and staff members. I believe that we hold a common purpose even when there may be disagreement. I think that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Dykman, and thank you to our letter writers. Okay, we will move forward. Let's see, to item 5, which these are our Board of Education committee reports. Just you can Please keep your reports succinct. If you can keep them to 2 minutes or less, and just want to remind our committee leaders to be sure if there are notes that you want to upload for the board to consider, you should share those with Ms. Palmer. Okay, item 5.1, these are our Government Relations Committee. Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Dr. Gant. You drive a hard bargain, because I really wanted to thank the people who from CCSD who presented and helped facilitate our joint meeting with the County Commission. We had Dr. Scott was our moderator. We had Dr. Pope. We had Ms. McGuire made presentations on behalf of the school district. Lawrence, who gave us very good treats for the meeting, and really enjoyed them. They were all by Zoom. It was interesting. I do want to kind of state very quickly that what the topic was of our joint meeting with the County Commission was student after school and summer programming. And there were a number of ideas that came out during this joint meeting with the County Commission. And I call your attention to the minutes that have been uploaded. And if you weren't able to attend the meeting, that you were able to look at those notes, and hopefully we will build on that. The next topic is we had Dr. Gant push forward or forwarded an email concerning the GSBA legislative agenda. Just a kind of a quick review. By April 15th, if this school district wants to propose any agenda items for the GSBA legislative agenda, then we would have the opportunity to do so, and we would have to vote on them at the very latest on April the 8th, because they have to be submitted by the 15th. In the past, we have proposed not having guns around our students who are attending UGA or other campuses when that controversy was there. That did not pass, but we have impacted in terms of QBE being indexed to inflation. That is now part of the GSBA legislative agenda. We also have TRS remaining as a defined benefit, was also adopted, and that came from Clark County. And then last year we had the DACA students paying in-state tuition, became part of the agenda for GSBA. So Clark County school board has a significant influence with the direction of GSBA, at least in terms of its legislative agenda. And so I asked board members to reflect upon to look at the GSBA legislative agenda as it's specified on the GSBA website, and see what changes or alterations you think would be appropriate for their lobbying efforts at the state capitol. And finally, the next year, Government Relations Committee meeting will be Tuesday, and our topic will be our own CCSD legislative agenda, which we need to update. The current one is posted, but it needs to be reviewed and updated. Thank you. Sorry for the length.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis, for those updates. Item 5.2, Policy Committee, Dr. Yeager.
Again, tonight we will be approving some K, J, and L policies that have been posted for a month and have received no public comment. Coming up, we will be focusing on the 35I policies that need to be reviewed and updated. So those will be presented to you at the next, although they'll be discussed first at the next policy meeting with Mr. Gaskin and his team, and I'll be putting those together in a package for you as a preview for the work session based on that meeting. We also have coming up today in our agenda setting meeting, we have 4 important policies that I need a little bit of guidance from the board to proceed with them. We have the BBC policy on committees that needs to be revised according to our most recent retreat decisions about the committees, the new committees we want to create. So I could use some help putting together what BBC is going to look like. We've also been asked to work on ABCDA, which is how do we fill unexpired terms that someone leaves. So we need someone to help me think about what we want to do with that. We've also had requests to talk about DO again, which is what do we do with surplus material. And then finally, something else we discussed at the retreat was how we name facilities and rethinking that. So I don't think I got quite enough information from the discussions at the retreat to move forward on these just yet. So I took them off the agenda for this month until we can kind of meet. And I guess let me know through email or whatever how you think we might proceed, or if you have suggestions for changes to those policies. And then we'll bring them to the following meeting in April. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Yeager. And so to be clear, if people have suggestions for these policies, they should reach out to you so that those can be brought to policy and discussed and then back to
Okay. Probably what I'll be doing is reaching out to individuals in the next few weeks to kind of get their sense of what it is. And I'll probably cobble together a draft, but I'll just do my best at a draft. And I really could use input from everyone on what we want to do moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
So is this an appropriate time to maybe ask a couple questions of that, or should I just send an email? I really want this for the full board because these are very significant issues or concerns. And before we make a policy about that, again, I really feel strongly that they be discussed with the full board, with input from the experts on staff who are working with them. It's almost like a policy committee where the board is included, is what I envision on some of these, because they really are big deals, if you will. And so I would like for us to, again, collaboratively flesh those out to understand what we're trying to do with the right people. I'm not suggesting everybody has to come to those, but I would think for something as significant as even finalizing the discussion around our committees, that needs to be a whole board discussion. I know we've done it twice, but if you're still not ready to go forward with it, then we obviously haven't discussed it enough, in my opinion. So I'd like to, and again, I don't want to be that extra person that causes us concerns about cognitive viewing our committees as being inappropriately handled. But we've got to find a way to discuss these things that impact us going forward. Policy is a big deal. It's not something that we throw out there and we change next week, or it's not, an arbitrary thing. It's something that we're building based on how we really see the district operating in terms of discharging our responsibility to our kids. So I would like to see us flesh that out a little bit more.
Linda, I don't disagree with you at all. I think policy is critical to our purpose. So I didn't mean to imply that this would be willy-nilly. I guess what I don't know is, Dr. Gant, whether we have time for another called meeting, or time for another retreat, or time for another full board discussion about these policies, or if it would make sense for me to gather feedback over the next few weeks, put something together and present it to the policy committee first. And then if they've discussed it and approved the wording, then we bring it to the work session where we can discuss it in the work session, and maybe just know that it's going to take a little while in the work session.
Yeah, I would recommend that, like, we have the process as it stands is that it would come before the full board, and it would come before the full board during the work session. And those work sessions are for that purpose, for us to be able to dissect things, ask questions. And that's not to suggest that we can't ask questions and discuss things at other meetings.
Right.
But yeah, I think we have a process that will help sort of guide guide our ultimate goal, which is having a policy that reflects the changes and the will of the board. I don't see any a need at this point for a call meeting, but of course that's up to the board. And I open the floor if there are others that have, other opinions that they would like to share in response to Ms. Davis and Dr. Yeager's and my comments.
I was just thinking that perhaps if Dr. Yeager could send out something that was very specific to the policies that she's talking about and give us a deadline for feedback as maybe a first step, and then as you were saying, kind of see how you can put something together from there and then bring it to the board, just to make sure that everybody does have the opportunity to give input and knows what they're giving input on. Because I feel like without a specific request, we may not all do it.
Right. And another thing too is that I think this will give time because, the board is not exclusively, our responsibility is not exclusively policy. And so there's a district, Dr. Thomas and her team will need time to look back at these policies as well, to see it, particularly with surplus materials and things like that. There are things that the district or information that they may have access to that, that we would want to basically do this together. And so I feel like the time that we are typically together is during policy. And so I do believe that would be the appropriate and most efficient time to do this work.
But everybody's not in policy.
No, right. Everybody's not in policy, but that is the purpose. And so if Dr. Yeager reaches out to the full board, after speaking with Dr. Thomas and her team, and she reaches out and asks specifically for any feedback, it sounds like that team will take that feedback and try to at least be prepared for the policy meeting at which this will be discussed. And at that point, policy committee votes to move, that discussion or those policies to the full board in a work session. And so the board will be involved. It's just that they will be involved later in that process, and certainly can go back and watch, for those that don't attend, go back and watch the board, the policy meeting.
Well, and the reason I pulled it off of the agenda for this morning at the meeting was because I would rather have some input up front as well, not just input at the end. If it's okay, I will follow Kara's suggestion and put some things together, send it to the full board and ask for feedback by a certain date, and work on it that way. I think that's a good suggestion.
How many people are on the policy committee now?
There's 4.
So we're still using the old policy committee. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Gant, let me make a correction. I think because I've stepped off the policy committee, and I was going to try to listen to the meeting, but I didn't see it online. Is it being taped or? Yeah.
That's a good question. I'm sorry. I assumed that it was, but maybe it's not. Dr. Thomas and Ms. Palmer?
They are online. They're videoed. I'll look and see if I can find exactly where they're located on YouTube.
I found last Thursday's work session, but I couldn't find the policy. So I think that would be helpful for those of us who are not in the policy committee to be able to at least listen to what happened. But if it's there, I just missed it.
They are recorded, so we will look to find those, Mr. Davis.
And Dr. Thomas, are there any additional comments or considerations that the board should be thinking about related to this conversation or this report from the policy committee?
No, ma'am, I don't think so. I know that Dr. Yeager and Mr. Harris work closely together. I think they met today or yesterday. So they communicate regularly, and then he keeps me abreast, and he did not present any concerns when I met with him today.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Yeager, does that conclude your report?
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move forward to our property committee. Ms. Davis?
Yes, I am. The property committee has not met, and I would like to have a discussion or meeting with Dr. Thomas and the facilities people. That would be helpful. And I'll go ahead and do the same for the finance committee. We originally scheduled those meetings for the fourth Thursday in each, fourth Wednesday in each month. And now we don't do those. So I need to get with your staff, Dr. Thomas, to decide how we go forward with that as we work to revise our committee structure.
Yes, ma'am, and we have some items that we've started, just a running list of items that we need to place on those agendas. So you and I can get together, or you can get with Ms. Palmer, and we can resume our schedule or modify that meeting time if that works better for your schedule.
Great. I'd like to have a conversation before we call it. So if I'll get on your calendar first.
Yes, ma'am. No problem. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, just to be clear, was that 5-3 property committee and 5-4 finance committee update?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Great. Thank you for all of our reports. We'll move forward to item 6, which is the board president report. There were just a few things I wanted to mention, just reminders that I mentioned last week, that our committees will be in the process of changing. So we just would like for us to keep that at the forefront of our point. I'll be checking in with Dr. Yeager in policy, just because we want to be sure that a significant portion of that work is complete. Right now, our target date is in March to have to make revisions to our committee structure, but we also left that open based on. Secondly, I do not have a current update on our development calendar. I'm still in the process of speaking with our potential people. I think we've secured, or we have, tentatively have 3 people in mind. I'm trying to finalize the 4th person. So as soon as I know that basically from the feedback from last year. But as soon as we have a better idea, I'll send that out just so you all will be able to see that and share any concerns or comments or thoughts that you have. Dr. Thomas and I did meet with GSBA. And Dr. Thomas, you give me if this was going to be a part of your report. But just as an update, the last time we spoke at our retreat, we talked about moving forward with gathering stakeholder data. I also shared the email with you all maybe a month or 2 ago from Dr. Pauly from GSBA. And so we're moving forward with that plan that is also consistent with our conversations. And so over the next 2 to 3 months, we'll be in preparation of working through those steps, ideally by May, so that we can initiate community conversations, create the survey, and then get feedback from a specified community stakeholder group. I just wanted to just update you all as that's happening. And then lastly, and Dr. Thomas, I'm gonna sort of transition this to you, but we've been talking about return to in-person. I know we talked about it last semester. I think it may have come up in December as well. And we said that we would talk about it in January. And so Dr. Thomas and I spoke via email and began to talk about what that would look like. And so I know she'll be reaching out, or one of us will be reaching out regarding what that might look like, and have some ideas right now about what that could look like with the target date, I think, of next month. But my report stops there, and I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Thomas.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And Ms. Palmer will reach out and poll board members regarding your ability to return to face-to-face, our recommendation will be that upon this return, it will just be board members and possibly some members of cabinet, but not opening back up to the general public yet is our initial recommendation. But we will reach out to you in the next week to see if you will be able to return, and then can begin planning with our technology team to make sure we're able to set up back at the board office in a manner that's socially distanced and safety. We've received feedback from other stakeholders that if the expectation is that others have returned, that we also begin to work face-to-face if we are able. So again, Ms. Palmer will reach out to you all just to poll your ability so that we can plan appropriately. That do not have any new information. Our numbers across the Athens-Clarke County are continuing in a downward trend, so we are excited to see that. And as always, we'll continue to monitor. We are changing just the amount of information provided on our website that will be on our dashboard. I received some feedback and suggestions from Dr. Anderson a few weeks ago, so we have modified the information that's on that dashboard. Excuse me. And you all will be able to see that at the end of each week on our district website. So that is that update. We appreciate the comments and feedbacks regarding our return to school and regarding the calendar. My only point of clarity for the calendar is that the vote survey was done regarding spring break. That survey took place pre-pandemic. I think there might have been some information gathered while I was out sick about the spring break for this school year that resulted in this one being moved. But the one for the 2-year planning, that survey took place before we were out for a pandemic. So that's the only point of clarity I have about the calendar, again, hearing the voices and different perspectives of all of our stakeholders. And as always, we'll attempt to make decisions that are in the best interest of the majority of our students. So I thank you, Dr. Gant and board, for the conversations and feedback that we have all had and continue to have. And I don't feel that I or my team take the feedback personally. This is about simply trying to make a move in the best interest of all kids. So I do have to say, Dr. Gannon, I apologize if I'm out of line, but I have to say this publicly just based on one of the statements that was made. I am never ashamed of the fact that I am a parent of Clarke County School District. I'm a proud parent, just like I'm a proud product of Clarke County Schools, but a decision will never be made for the interest of children based on what's in the best interest of my own child. And I have to go on record and say that. And just for the record, my child will not benefit from us returning to face-to-face because of her status as a student. She will not ever set foot again back in Clarke County Schools as a student. But I have to go on record and say that just to counter that narrative that as a professional, I will always do what's in the best interest of all children and not personally what's in the best interest of my child. So I apologize if that is out of order, but my primary job will always be that of mother and wife. And I can take personal attacks on me and professional attacks, but I have to let you all know that I am very ethical in my practices and will not make any decision that will benefit solely the child of the Thomas household. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Let me pause here. Are there any questions? I realized I didn't ask if there were any clarifying questions under my comments or report, but are there any questions regarding item 6.1, my comments or Dr. Thomas's comments and report?
I would like to.
Go ahead,
I would like to. Okay.
Dr. Maddox.
I've experienced a lot of anxiety, to be honest with you all, about going back to school. going back to school face to face. Not so much the younger kids, especially those who are in special education, but I am concerned about middle school and high school, especially we're talking about 4 days a week with my concern with the ventilation, the air purifiers, that's something we've been talking about for a while in these schools, as well as just still not feeling. I'm sorry, I got two babies over here. Stop. And as well as I want to be sure that we do the best that we can do when it comes to mitigating. You know, and I know I shared something with Dr. Thomas, and she, her staff took a look at a presentation, and there are things to be considered with that. FDA, something where people could be tested very quickly and get results within 10 minutes. And I just want us to, I would feel more comfortable, especially with high school students, being that they can get COVID and transmit it just as, you know, just like other adults. And I just, you know, I know we say that we are concerned about the children and we're, you know, and we're not, you know, solely gonna, you know, we're not as concerned about the adults, but the children. But I believe that we have to be equally concerned about everybody because we only have one life. People are dying from COVID. Teachers are dying from COVID. I want to just see more information about specific mitigation, you know, and understand when we're going to be moving from a 1 day for high school to more days a week from high school. There's a lot of students in high schools, you know, being clear about what's going to be enforced, you know, with masks and hands and, you know, how is that going to be monitored? How would that be disciplined when it's not enforced? Because I don't want to see more dead teachers across the state. You know, it's not that I don't trust Dr. Thomas or her staff, but it's just that, you know, this is a virus that's real and that's people are dying from it. And so, you know, so I am very concerned about middle school and high school opening up, especially, you know, more days that, you know, moving more past 1 day a week. So those are just my concerns, and I just wanted to put that out there. I actually have an email that I sent out while the comments went back and forth, but I'm truly experiencing anxiety about this. I'm not comfortable with these higher grades going back. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Dr. Maddox. Others?
I guess,
A hand?
Dr. Gant, kind of following up on what Dr. Maddox said, you know, I would like the discussion to also include, you know, presumably if things are, you know, moving in the right direction in terms of the virus, you know, what summer programming looks like. You know, if there's some, and I don't know how it would be done, but if there was like a continuation of schooling past the last day of school, and if there's any discussion on that point, or is that just putting the cart before the horse because we haven't gotten there yet? But I guess I would be interested to know if there's any planning as to what, you know, June, July may look like if we have, you know, if the virus is at bay and we're trying to play catch up with the education, again, particularly of middle and high school students.
So, and I can let Mr. Gaskin speak if he would like to. And Dr. Gann, I don't want to prolong the meeting, but just a quick response to that is that the team is working to look at acceleration models and strategies and support. And I think I might have shared that last week, but that varied ways to provide that support virtually, face to face. and utilizing community structures and support. We mentioned last week that we'll be looking at how we can partner with groups such as leisure services, church camps, YMCA, groups that will have our students with them. And so ways that we can utilize our funding to help provide academic support in other settings so that we don't inconvenience families by them not having childcare during the day. So how can we work with our community to support that in addition to having programming at school or virtually to support those students? And so Mr. Gaskins, if you want to speak, and just really briefly to the comment by Dr. Maddox, the mitigation strategies and reinforcement to what they were when we were here before. So middle school has already been back, and they had, practices for transition, hand washing, mask wearing, and we had very limited issues with students not complying with those expectations. So we will continue to have the same expectations for mitigation strategies that were in place, and then any additional strategies that we can implement. I'm actually meeting with a group next week to follow up on some of the things you talked about, such as collective testing, pool testing, and nature as well. So we are continuing to pursue that. And I want to be clear that I have never said that we don't value teachers equally to students. I think what I have said is that we're going to try to do what's in the best interest of students. That does not mean at the sacrifice of teachers, and that we do not value teachers, because we value teachers. My life is important. The life of my spouse is important. The life of my friends who work here, and I consider any colleague a partner with me in this work. And so I don't think we've ever said, I know I've never said that they are secondary, but I do think that we have to start taking some actions to move forward for the majority, and do what we can and do it as safe as we can to support our students. But I do not want anyone to feel that I do not value, or I place value less on the lives of our teachers than I do our students. But we also have to find ways to take some action. And we spend every day, and that's no exaggeration, we meet every day talking about the things we're talking about now and how to address this. So this is something that stays at the top of our radar, and we're taking actions on. Mr. Gaskins, did I leave out anything?
I don't think so, Dr. Thomas. I would just add that as we talk about summer school, Mr. Davis, we're talking about in-person summer school, which we are planning to have a formal meeting with Hope McGuire, who is leading that for the district tomorrow. We're also talking about a virtual option for families that are still not comfortable being in the building, but still need support in the summer. And we're also talking about a self-paced option, which is an idea that came up when I met with a convening of chief academic officers today. So individuals that may not need remediation or recovery, there are still activities that students can do throughout the summer that accelerates their learning. So we're looking at a lot of different models that we want to work very quickly tomorrow, so we can have some information to share with principals, teachers, and parents by next week during conference day.
I had a very, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Davis.
I was saying that's exciting. And as we come up with these models and people actually start implementing them, I hope we'll be able to tell everybody about it. So again, somebody can, the work can be widespread, and it might trigger try something different. I am absolutely convinced that there is no catch up, that we will probably be redefining who we are for these students that are already so far behind. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but there are obviously some things that we must know in order to continue to be eligible for state and federal funding as a district. So I'm grateful for the work that I know that this administration is putting in to try and get us there. And I think the hard part is to try and describe what is it, a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle in a short meeting. And I think we shouldn't have an expectation that happens. But I do hope that we will make sure that we share the successes that we're having and even the things that don't work, but because there might be just one tweak that would make that the best thing in the world. So I hope we'll have more, I'm begging for a lot more communication about that. I think that's important. People get motivated every day. Thank you.
So
Ms.
very
Hall?
briefly, I would just like some, I guess, clarification on the district's position on the ventilation systems. There has been a lot of discussion about the ventilation systems. Air purifiers has been a really important mitigation measure. So can you speak to that? Where is the district in the process of investigating that, or has a decision made, just so we can kind of get some clarity on that issue?
Yes, ma'am. We had Mr. Fisher and Mr. Mark Bailey presented information to the board regarding that a couple of months ago. I asked him to work more, and Mr. Lawrence Harris, and they've done that this week, where we went back and summarized all of that information, and we were going to provide that in your board update tomorrow, so that we could kind of succinctly review for you what had been covered. And that way, if there were additional questions, and then we are continuing to explore other options, but the HVACs that we have in the majority of our schools are comparable, but I can't speak complete contractor language, and I don't want to misspeak, but we have compiled all of that for you all, and we'll have that in your update that comes out tomorrow.
Thank
And
you.
then if there are questions, don't hesitate to ask. And if I'm not capable of answering them, Mr. Bailey is always available and will get right back to us. And we can compile all of those questions if you would like, and just get one summary back response. But we are continuing to look at other options. So thank you.
I have a question. I also know last week there was some discussion about if teachers needed extra, I guess, resources to modify the way that they were teaching when we returned to in-person, that those resources would be available to them. So I kind of wanted to see, gotten any feedback from teachers about having outdoor classrooms and getting the supplies that they would need to set those sorts of infrastructures up so that they feel more confident about returning.
Right. I will defer to Mr. Gaskins. I know just for us, we did order face shields for every teacher to the mask they already have, and those types of things I can speak to. But if requests have come, they would have come from the principal to the principal supervisors. So I'll have to defer to Mr. Gaskins.
We have not received any requests, Dr. Thomas, as it relates to materials for outdoor classrooms. We continue to get requests for instructional materials such as fine arts materials and cleaning supplies for instruments and things along that nature. But specifically, we have not received any requests for outdoor classroom materials this past week.
One more question. I also do vaguely remember from, I think it was 2-3 months ago when Mr. Fisher presented on the ventilation systems in the schools, about them having ionized.
The ionization systems.
They were ionized.
Yes. Yes.
My concern now is that that was not satisfactory to teachers and others, and it seems to me that what people are wanting are these external sort of systems that are sort of actively cleaning the air out their time in the classroom. And I mean, we ordered them here in our building, and there's one in every single room, and there's a sort of comfort to that. And there's some really big ones and some small ones. And again, there's just sort of a comfort to that. And I do wonder, is there a way that we can just explore providing those for the classrooms so that sense of security is sort of installed into their environment? I don't see any, it doesn't seem to me like it would hurt anybody to do that.
I'd agree with that and echo that as well.
And actually, I had sent a message already to some of the cabinet discussing that this evening. Yes, that's an easy answer is yes. It's a simple answer. And I think sometimes you're right. People seem to feel better about what they can see. And so we hadn't, because it was being done through the external system. And there have been air quality tests done. We've walked buildings, offered to walk buildings with our principals, let them see the measurement of the air quality and it's like the RPMs or something. Again, that's not my language. So, but Mr. Bailey has done that at multiple schools and has done that with multiple principals so they can see the measurement of the air. And so we had not done it because when you look at the specifications of what would occur with a system and you measure that by what's happening with the external system, in many cases, the air quality has been better with this external system. And so we have not made that purchase because in some cases it would be just what you all have said, the physical comfort of seeing it. But when you measure the air quality has been at that level or higher than it would be if they had that portable system. So that's a truthful answer for why some of those purchases haven't been made. But if that extra layer of portability is something that just gives a visual comfort, that is something that I've already added to my agenda to discuss with our team tomorrow.
Yeah, I just wanted to add my support for that. And I think that it is the case that when they presented that information to us, there were places and certain systems that are doing a good job. But I don't remember that it was in every building and in every space. So I think that having the portable air purifiers would be both helpful in actually cleaning the air more and also, I mean, I don't want to purchase things just for appearances. I think that it would actually be a benefit, and maybe there are some places that it's already good enough, but it seems like there are certainly classrooms and some schools that have older HVAC systems in which it's not. And I think that it's one of those things where we get a lot of letters on one side and then letters on the total opposite side, but I don't feel like there's been anybody who has said, please don't buy air purifiers. I feel like that's something that everybody feels like could be a good mitigation strategy.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would just add, maybe with the transparency factor, if these things have been done and explored with principals, I don't know if that information is trickling down to the teachers, but if that is something that is visual that can help them feel better, maybe asking the principals to share that information or being able to dispatch that to our teachers so that they have some element of comfort in knowing that these things have been explored and are being measured to make sure that everyone in the building is safe.
Yes, I agree. We have note and we will be meeting as always tomorrow morning, and this is at the top of my list now.
I also get the sense, I put this in the chat, but Dr. Gant reminded me I'm supposed to speak up instead of type into the chat, is I'm hearing that the teachers are not always getting their requests through the principals, particularly for these outdoor classrooms that they're requesting. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, the hierarchy of who's in charge, but if teachers know their classroom and they know their students and they know their teaching style and they think that they can do a more effective job in an outdoor classroom, or maybe they know that their room is low circulation and really needs one of these air filters because it tends to be moldy or it tends to be, in the corner that doesn't get good exchange. I think the teachers are the ones who know what sort of conditions they need to teach under to be safe, and not getting direct information from them might be a problem. So it would be nice if there was a mechanism for them to delay some of these supports.
I will work with Mr. Gaskins. I think rather than requesting directly for the supports, we just need to work with our building leaders to ensure that they have an open mechanism within their buildings for teachers to be able to share that and compile that information and then get it to us. The principals are also included in that dialogue, but we want to be sure that then that conversation gets to us. So I'll make sure that we have that conversation as well.
Thank you.
Apologize, Dr. Gant. Sorry.
Mr. Schuneman?
Dr. Thomas, I was just going to add, we do have the purchasing policy, purchasing procedures in place to field these requests already. And I was just going to mention that not all schools, but there has been a couple schools that have ordered outdoor tents. And so I just pulled up those orders, and I know, for example, one school ordered 5 outdoor pop-up tents and 1 big 10 by 20 canopy.
Okay.
So we do have the purchasing process that they can follow, going to their bookkeeper, going to their principal, seeing where there's available funds, and making those purchases. Some schools are doing that. It's just not across the board.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that, Mr. Schuneman. That concludes me, Dr. Gant.
Okay, so I'm probably sounding like a broken record. I'm going to encourage us, if we have questions, to reach directly out to Dr. Thomas, of course, by phone or by email, whole board communication, so that we don't fall into the very tempting habit of using our business meetings to discuss issues and things that could have been discussed before we got here. I do know that these are very uncertain times, and there is a lot of anxiety, and so I do want to acknowledge that. I also want to balance that there's a tension with being sure that our time is efficient, and that we're just building ongoing communication with Dr. Thomas and her staff as well. And so I think there's a board update that should be coming out either tomorrow or Saturday, based on the schedule that we normally receive them. And so I do want to encourage us to reach out if you have questions about the update or any other concerns that you hear from the community, or any other questions you have about the reopening plan. Okay. We'll move forward to our financial report. Dr. Thomas and Mr. Schuneman.
Yes, ma'am, Dr. Gant. I think Mr. Schuneman presented this last week, so I don't think we need an extensive overview. We will need a vote, but Mr. Schuneman, if there's anything you need to add, I will turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Just to recap, internally within our organization, the revenues are strong. They're on par to collecting at least 100% of our budgeted revenues. In terms of expenditures, we're still a little bit behind where we were at this point last fiscal year, and all points or all signs point to us spending less than our approved budget. So with those two mechanisms, you've got revenues higher than anticipated and expenditures a little bit less. You're kind of on a good track in terms of your financial projection. The big thing that kind of looms large right now, it's right there in the middle of the page, the state QBE. We're waiting right now. Both the House and Senate, they've passed the FY21 amended budget, and it's just sitting on the governor's desk right now to be signed. And if that is approved by the governor, we will receive about $4 million of QBE revenue that was not budgeted in FY21. So they've looked at their own revenues. They said, hey, we're sitting on quite a big pile of money right now, and what can we do in this fiscal year distribute some of that. So one thing is restoring austerity to schools, and that's that 60%. It'd mean about $4 million to CCSD. One of the other things that's in there, and it's definitely made the news, and I'm sure all of you heard about it, is the $1,000. It was originally pegged for school level employees, and it's grown from there. The discussion just recently now is it's extended to all state employees. Granted, they make under a certain dollar threshold, but as long as that passes by the governor, the next step is it's going to be sent over to GDOE to kind of adopt who that $1,000 applies to at the school level. And once we get more instructions on that, it's likely that we won't, or that GDOE is not going to approve it and have those instructions available until March. And so just it may be April or so at the earliest before those $1,000 bonuses get into the pockets of our employees. So I just want to give you a quick update on that. So other than that, Dr. Thomas, that's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Schoeneman. So it would be my recommendation, Dr. Gant, that the financial.
I've got one question.
Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Yes, Mr. Schoeneman, I know that in the past, when there's been bonuses put for teachers, that they were only teachers that were QBE funded were covered. Is this different than that?
All I can say is we have to wait on the DOE and see which, I'm not sure if you're familiar with CPI, but there's certain CPI codes, and they'll tell us which CPI codes this $1,000 will apply to. And then once we figure out, okay, approximately how much CCSD is going to get, what's the financial implications if we extend this to everybody? So we'll do that math, we'll do that exercise, and I've sat down and spoke with all of the local CFOs. They're doing the same exact process, and I think everybody's in the same boat, and they're really going to make a strong effort to have that $1,000. But we just have to sit back and we've got to wait and see what that funding is coming from the state before we can make that decision.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you. So, oh, go ahead.
I was going to make a motion to accept the financial report as provided.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Davis. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Hall made, seconded the motion. Any further questions, discussion? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll on all in favor of accepting the financial report.
Sorry, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that motion passes. We'll move forward to item 9. These are our policies to be posted for public comment for 4 weeks. 9.1, these are our policy regulations and exhibits. Dr. Yeager, are there any, is there any additional information? I know we'll need to pull some of these out, so just keeping that in mind for whoever makes the motion. But Dr. Yeager, is there any additional information that you would like to add?
No, there has been no public comment, and I don't believe we had too many questions about these except for the KG policy at the work session. Seems like everybody's okay with them.
I have a question. You had said in your report that these have already been out for public comment, but it says here that these are policies to be posted for public comment. I wasn't sure which one it was.
Okay. That would be why there's no public comment. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got ahead of myself, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so these are still need to go out for public comment.
That's right. That's right. These need to go out for public comment. And the discussion about KG was that we could move it forward to public comment and see what people think about it, or we can pull it right now and push it back to the policy committee to deal with some of the discussions about community schools.
Okay, and so we would need to basically, if there's one in question, based on my understanding, Mr. Pruitt, I think we mentioned earlier that whoever makes the motion can then make the motion for those policies that aren't in question, and then we can pull those other two out to discuss, make a motion on separately.
That's right. I would suggest go ahead and divide them that way to begin with. You know, the majority may vote to send those other two policies out for public comment as well, but there's been a request not to vote on them together, so that needs to be honored.
Okay.
So would you like me to make the motion? The first motion?
That would be fine.
Okay, so I move that we move KA, which is policy, the first one, and then 4 through 9, KM, JGC, JGCB, JGCD, JGCDR1, and LDAJA forward for public comment.
Second.
Okay, so Dr. Yeager made the motion that KA and 4 through 9 be put forward for public comment. Mr. Davis made a second. Are there any follow-up questions, discussion, or concerns? All right. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll on all of those in favor of moving those stated policies to public comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that motion passes. Those policies will be moved to public comment. We are now left with, I think, according to my records, policy KG, and then regulation KGR1. Dr. Yeager, is that correct?
That's correct. So I can make a motion I move to move KG and KGR1 up to public comment.
Okay, we have a motion to move KG and KGR1 to public comment. Is there a second?
Second.
Who was that, Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and then a second by Dr. Anderson. Further discussion.
Is it necessary for them to be in public comment for the public to respond to those? Or to comment on them? I know that's the official place for the board to receive public input on the policies, but do they have to be in public comment in order to receive that input?
That's just the process, Linda, but I mean, of course, we can get comments as we always do through email.
That's what I thought too. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Davis?
Yes, Dr. Gant, since I'm probably the cause of this, in fact, I know I'm the cause of this. I'm going to go ahead and kind of express some of my concerns just real briefly. One is that this policy was written in 1991, so it is an old policy, so it does need to be updated. You know, I feel like it has not taken into account some of the changes in public education, even within Clark County, in terms of, you know, reviewing our contract as a charter school system, in terms of the creation of the LSGTs, in terms of our expressed strong desire to partner with community organizations, and the kind of the ongoing assumption of school board members, and I don't want to speak for people, but this is my impression, that school board members over the last, well, 6 years, I've been on the school board, 7 years, you know, we've talked a lot, we've used the phrase a lot, community schools. And, you know, because we, you know, even in terms of, you know, when we talk about building new schools, you know, we talk about, well, are they within walking distance? Are they really going to be community schools? And so it's even impacted our discussion on facilities. And the way that I see this policy, I don't feel like it's been that it addresses those needs, and I also do not believe that it's been practiced consistently. And I've said this before in an email, and I just want to make it crystal clear. My neighborhood met at Whit Davis back in 2009 to form a informal neighborhood association. And we had a police officer there. The school was open to us. And that was the first time that I met any of my neighbors. We had no treasury. We still don't have a treasury. There was no way, I don't know how that meeting came together, but I do know that we did not pay $250 to use that space. I know that Whit Davis teachers and staff, well, let me just say that we were not sponsored by any school club or non-sponsored school club or school support organization. We weren't any of those things. We didn't have a certificate of insurance for $1 million. But that school was across the street from us. And it was my personal introduction to Clark County Schools, outside from being an employee, of being in the neighborhood where there was a public school. In my time, I've seen GED classes being open to community at night. I've seen those classes being taught by non-school staff. And I could go on with just kind of a number of examples that I've seen over the years. And I don't know how to, and I have had a conversation with Mr. Pruitt, and I understand, you know, that this is not a simple issue, that flinging open the doors, so to speak, there's a lot of discussion around it, a lot of concerns around it from a liability standpoint, from a messaging standpoint. So I don't have the answers. I wanted this pulled because I've got questions in terms of what's not in the policy and the interpretation as it's been applied throughout the years that is in the policy. And I guess I'm being data driven, being an emphasis. I would really like to find out in terms of what organizations have applied for access to our facilities, and who has been rejected, who has been accepted, under what terms, and whether organizations have had the amounts waived. There's just a lot of stuff I would like to find out in terms of how this policy has been practiced in the past.
And if I may,
Ms. Davis?
Yes, thank you. I just pulled up one of these policies. I think this was KG. We have an exhibit in here for the policies. This was reworked in its entirety since I've been on this board. So that was, I think, 2013, and it was reworked because I believe, as Dr. Lanoux explained to us at the time, that the facilities had just kind of gotten out of hand. So I agree with everything you're saying, Greg, in terms of us coming to closure or getting some more concrete information about this. But this was updated in 2013, at least the exhibit was. And I'll tell you, the controversy that I remember about it is one of our employees had typically used one of our facilities for like family reunions and gatherings of that nature. And so that's the one that kind of stuck out in my head because I had never thought about doing anything like that. But this has been since I've been on the board that this policy has been revisited, and that's when the bond for the $1 million liability came about. That's when the fee of $250 came about. And I don't know if we revisited that recently, but this policy has been updated well before, since 1991. I think, again, when we start looking at the school organizations and things, I remember distinctly that someone put together a spreadsheet because the question was, what did we mean by community schools? And had there been something that caused the school district not to respond to requests or something of that nature. So I know that spreadsheet was created, and I think we're getting to a place of actually sitting down and having that conversation because we were also trying to understand the responsibility for the charter schools and how did that work under our charter system and what organizations would come into the schools. Because there were so many people that wanted to bring programming into our school system. And I think a lot of it was driven by the Career Academy. Remember, it went through 2 or 3 iterations before it became what it is today. So it all kind of converged at the same time. I think it would be very important for us to have that conversation. The other thing that I will say is that just like you had neighborhood watch meetings on the east side, I did a lot of those over here at the Career Academy as well. And so it has always been open, and school members typically aren't charged that fee because we're a part of the school system, and it's our to reach out to the community. I think that same thing applies for the county. If the commissioners use a facility, your fees get waived or something of that nature. And so that's what I remember from this. So I think it would be very important for us to have the conversation about what we mean by community schools and is there use beyond what we have outlined in this project. But now Ted Gilbert is the person who brought the fee structure to us because he said there's a cost for doing this. And so while it's great to, we wouldn't charge any group that's supporting our children. If the students are involved in it, there's no charge at all. But if it's an outside group, then we certainly would want to recover the cost for building maintenance and utilities use and things of that nature. So that is what we voted for when we last updated this policy.
Okay.
And I was just going to jump in if I may.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Pruitt.
Yeah, I just checked real quickly. So the revision date on the policy itself is 2013, as well as on the 2 exhibits. The regulation is 2015.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Just want to look through to be sure there are no other questions. We have a motion on the floor to move this to public comment, and we've opened the floor for questions and further discussion.
Dr. Gant?
Yes.
I just, just for clarification, first off, in terms of the meeting that I'm talking about, this was that my neighborhood met, and I didn't get on the board until 2015.
Okay.
So just for clarification purposes, I guess I'm still not, what I'm asking for is not to alter that, not to move this policy forward. I just think it needs more work before it's put out to public comment. So that's my question. That's my concern.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Davis and Ms. Davis, as well as Mr. Pruitt. We have a motion on the floor. If there's, I'm sorry?
Is the motion to move it forward or the motion?
That's right. The motion is to move it forward to public comment, and there's been a second on that motion, and we've had discussion.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all of those in favor of moving this motion to, I'm sorry, moving these policies KG and KGR1 to public comment.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
No.
Ms. Gallagher,
No.
Mrs. Davis,
No.
Dr. Yeager,
No.
Dr. Dykeman,
No.
Dr. Anderson,
No.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
No.
and Dr. Maddox.
No.
Okay, so that motion fails. That KG and KGR1 will not be moved forward for public comment. And I think by default, if you could clarify for me, Mr. Pruitt, that means it just sort of automatically goes back to policy.
Sorry, had to get unmuted. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So we will move forward. I think that concludes all of our policies, right, Dr. Yeager?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. We will move forward to item number 10, and these are our personnel items. Item 10.1 is our February 2021 personnel report. And then item 10.2 is our February 2021 contract list. Dr. Thomas?
Yes, ma'am. It is my recommendation that the personnel list items 10.1 and 10.2 be approved as presented.
Okay. So Dr. Thomas has made a recommendation. The floor is open for a motion.
So
Did
moved.
anything? Okay, I'm sorry. Nothing
Oh.
changed from last week, right?
No, the only change, and I thank you, Dr. Dykeman, for bringing to our attention that the dates were wrong for our board member resignations, and that's been corrected. So that was the only change that was made, was that we made those 2020 instead of 2021.
Great, thank you.
And thank you for presenting questions last week so that we could get those responses to you about personnel.
So I move that we accept the personnel and contract lists as presented.
Okay. Dr. Yeager made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Dr. Anderson or Dr. Dykeman?
Anderson.
Anderson.
Okay. Dr. Anderson made a second. Just for the record, are there any further questions or discussion around these two items? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Okay, so those items are approved. That motion passes. We'll move forward to our consent agenda. Item 11.1, these are to approve the January 7th, 2021 work session minutes, and item 11.2 to approve the January 14th, 2021 board meeting. The floor is open.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. Was that
Second.
I second it.
Okay.
okay? Dr. Dykeman seconded the motion. Oh, this is consent agenda. Okay, so all in favor? Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll. Sorry, I'm getting myself mixed up here.
Okay.
If you
Mr.
would
Davis,
take roll.
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion passes. We'll move forward to our other action items. And give me a second here, my computer. Ms. Palmer, could you put the agenda back up? My computer. I'm unable.
Dr. Yeager, thank you so much. Since
Dr.
I'm
Yeager.
not working.
Okay, Item 12, these are other action items, 12.1. And this is the 2021-2022 and 2022-2023 academic calendar. Before we open the floor for the motion, just were there any further comments, questions, or discussion?
We did make a change, Dr. Gant, based on the feedback that we received regarding the length of time for the December holiday, winter holiday break. And so, excuse me, Dr. Dykeman had brought to our attention that it was like, I think 21 days. So that has now been moved to a more traditional where kids go to school through that Friday and then are off the next 2 weeks and then New Year's. So that is the one change that was made. And I don't know, Mr. Gaskins, Mr. Harris, if there were other changes. Those days, I think, did push us just to start school a couple of days later. So we did make that shift in the calendar.
Okay. Thank you for those updates. Other questions, discussion?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
It's just, I just wanted, what we were communicating through email, and I don't think I got a clear answer on the question that I asked. So apologies for bringing that space into this space. It was about when we moved the spring, when the decision was made to move the spring break to April, and I remember you all sharing the survey results that were sort of in the upper 60% of respondents saying that they preferred a later spring break date. Was there qualitative information that was gleaned from that survey? Was there a reason that was given for moving it from the UGA sort of alignment to a later date?
I can tell you just what I remember qualitatively, and Mr. Gaskins and Mr. Harris, if you want to add. For those who wanted it to stay, it was the alignment to University of Georgia and preferring it overwhelmingly. For those who wanted it in March, that was the reason. For those who wanted it later, it was that the time of year, it was just kind of cold and dreary and it wasn't truly a spring break. And the feedback we received is that while we have a significant number of our families who work at the University of Georgia, there are equally as many who do not. And we also receive feedback, and I don't know if this is accurate because I do not work for the university, but that only academic staff are the ones that are off traditionally during spring break, and that the staff at the university that would kind of be synonymous with our classified staff here would have to take leave or vacation during that time anyway, and that those families shared that they would be able to take that time at any point because they're not naturally off during the spring break time of holiday. So it was mostly around just the time of year and people preferring that it be a little later when it was a little warmer in the year. And so that was the vast majority. So it was either really liking it aligned with UGA or liking it when it was warmer and not necessarily being UGA staff or being UGA employees, but not having spring break off naturally. So those were kind of the main kind of polarizing ends of the qualitative. Did I leave off anything that you remember, Mr. Harris or Mr. Gaskins?
I was just gonna say, I know we did ask for individuals to provide additional requests or information in that survey. So I think we do have that qualitative data. I can't remember who is the owner of that survey, but I think that we can provide that if it is requested.
Do you remember what the response rate was? So was it a few hundred people who responded?
It was 2,238.
2,000 people?
Mm-hmm.
And nearly 70% of them responded that they'd rather have it moved to April?
Yes, ma'am. 62.9. Mm-hmm.
Okay, All right. I was just making sure I remembered that right. And thank you for adding that qualitative aspect because I really was curious about.
I
what the
was
reason-
surprised too. I was really curious because I always also just assumed that all UGA staff were off during that set time. So I learned that information again. I didn't know and don't know how accurate that is, but that was some of the feedback that I recalled reading at that time.
Okay. Thank you. That was very enlightening. I appreciate
You're welcome.
Okay. Any additional questions, comments? I do want to circle around Ms. Gallagher. I know we have not heard from you tonight, so I just want to check in to be sure you don't have any comments or questions. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Dr. Oh, actually, no. So the floor is open for a motion for item 12.1.
Sorry, I had a comment / question. And like Dr. Thomas, I just wanted to qualify that I am not asking this question of my own benefit. But I wonder about the spring break in terms of whether we know the impact that moving it away from UGAs will have on students who are dual enrolled. So we have students that, and Athens Tech also, because Athens Tech tends to have the same spring break as UGA, who are dual enrolled at either UGA or Athens Tech will effectively then not have either spring break. And then also the student teachers, I can't say for certain, but I think they probably don't really get a break either. So maybe that's not that big of an issue. But I do also know that a lot of our ASP staff are students, and then they would be away. And so that week of UGA spring break, we would probably have a decrease in the number of people available for ASP. And it was just that moving it to April, while warmer, makes it so that there's 12 weeks of class time prior to spring break and then only 6.5 weeks afterwards. So it makes for a really long time prior to spring break and then just like a short time before the end of the semester. So I just wanted to make sure that moving it doesn't result in some unintended hardships, consequences, things for the students beyond when people want to take vacation or can take vacation. So those were my concerns about just moving the break at all, or just sort of deciding on when to have the break based on preference, I guess. Like, how is it affecting the students?
Yes, and same thing. So I'm sorry, Mr. Gaskins, please jump in if I omit or misspeak. We did have that conversation. We have some student teachers who do not just come from the University of Georgia. And we talked about how, unfortunately, for the University of Georgia's student teachers, some of them do student teach in other counties besides Clark County. So that's if it were where we were kind of in that same partnership that we used to be in at that level, we still have a partnership, but where the majority of their student teachers came here, I think that impact would probably be greater then than it is now. We also have the difficulty in admissions for many of our students, particularly our students of color, in getting into the University of Georgia. Many of our students are dual enrolled at the University of North Georgia, and they have a spring break at a different time. So it's kind of like a 2/3. You're right, there's the Athens Tech group and there's a UGA group, but then we have that group of students who attend UNG because of difficulty with acceptance at UGA, and those students have had to navigate a different spring break. So you bring up good points. Now the ASP, we do have a good number of students who are from the University of Georgia that support our ASP programs. So it's kind of, Dr. Dykeman, we did, after we received that from you, I thought, these are some really good questions, and we tried to research that and make sure that there wasn't a overwhelming burden being placed on any particular group due to that decision. Mr. Gaskins?
Yes, I really can't add anything, Dr. Thomas, other than as it relates to the student teachers at UGA, Dr. Thomas and I do sit on a panel, and I don't know what to call it, Dr. Thomas. It may not be a panel, but an advisory board.
Professional Development Schools Steering Committee.
Right, and thank you. And the individual from UGA are always very accommodating to our needs and want to know how they can better support our student teachers based on things that we've created. So we can definitely have an open conversation with them because we want students to be able to have their spring break so they can come back refreshed. And so I think there's an opportunity to work on that with them.
Dr. Thomas, can I add one point as well?
Yes, sir.
I do want to also point just some of the qualitative data that also came out of the survey was also for parents who also work in surrounding counties, Jackson County, Oconee County. Some of those counties, their spring break is that same week in April. That aligns with our calendar. And also, if you all recall from the joint board and commission meeting, our Leisure Services Department with Athens Clarke County Unified Government plans their programming based off our calendar. So they always offer programming when we're not in school. So when our calendars finally approved and published, we get that over to ACC government, and then they plan their programs based off of times kids are in school. So they do it over Christmas, spring break, fall break, pretty much any break we have, they're planning programs for our kids. So there are options as well there.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I don't think we have a motion yet. The floor, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Maddox, I can't remember if we have a motion on the table.
No, we just entered into discussion.
Okay. All right. So the floor is open for a motion.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Davis made a motion to approve as item 11.1. And Ms. Hall made a second. I'm sorry, did I get it wrong? I don't have it in
You
front of me.
said 11, I think we're on 12.
The
Yeah,
12
sorry.
one? Let me switch my screen. Okay. So Ms. Davis made a motion. Who made the second? I'm sorry.
It was me, Nicole.
Okay, Ms. Hall made a second. For the record, is there any follow-up discussion or questions? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all in favor of approving the 2021, 2022, 2022, 2023 academic calendar.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Yeager?
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Gant?
Yes.
Attorney Hull?
Yes.
Dr. Maddox?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that motion passes. We are now at item 12.2, and this is our to approve action to approve the high school program of study 2021-2022. I just want to open the space up for any updates. I know that there were some questions sent out. There was also a document that was shared with us that we've read through. But I also want to just open the floor for any updates and clarification that needs to be made.
Yeah, so I'll start because I had a couple of concerns. I just want clarity on what the board is deciding and the effect of it. Are we looking at just adopting the program of study outlined by the Department of Education, or are we looking at adopting that program of study outlined by the DOE as well as the policies that accompany that in the booklet?
That's a great question, Ms. Hull. So we are doing there's a state policy that we are adopting the courses that are approved through the state DOE. And we have made some revisions to that. As I mentioned, instead of British Lit, we've added multicultural education. So that's one part of it. The other part is a CCSD policy that says that we will provide a booklet. And so we are providing the booklet in alignment with the policy, but really the booklet represents operational and informational information for parents. And so I think, as I was looking at the questions and thinking about how to better explain this, I think some of the questions that you raised live in our strategic plan. We have some work on how we improve representation and gifted, how we do governance honors. And so right now in the booklet, it just shows our operating guidelines or information related to that. But I think there's an opportunity to improve that as we roll out our strategic plan. So right now, we're just approving the program of study, which are the courses. And by our CCSD policy, we are bringing forward the booklet in alignment with policy. I am bringing that policy about bringing the booklet to the policy committee because there's really not a policy implication around bringing the booklet. But since it is a part of policy, that's what we are required to do. I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope that gives you a little more clarity.
A little bit, because it seems like we're being asked to vote on two things. What I don't want to happen is we vote on the program of study in terms of the courses, and we also vote on this book sets out the policies for the next year, because there are several, you can call them policies, you can call them pieces of information, but there are several parts of that booklet that I don't feel like align with our strategic policy. And I feel like reek of privilege. And so I don't want to vote on anything if that is going to cause us to put policies, procedures, operational standards, whatever, in course for next year without having the opportunity and the space to flesh them out to make sure that they are equitable for all of our students and benefit all of our students. So I'm not sure if there can be a division of it. I'm not sure, are we labeling the policies or the operational standards around that? What are we calling them? Is that something that is fleshed out by the board? I don't know, but I do want to just put it out there. If we are only supposed to be looking at the program of study, I would rather that we distinguish that and vote on the courses, because the material surrounding that has a lot of concerns, raises a lot of concerns for me.
So just to add to that, some of the information that you raised are our current policies. So if we want to revise those, we would revise those in the policy committee. And some of those things are coming up, like we revised our Val-Sal policy that appeared in our program of study. We had some concerns about our Val-Sal. We took that to policy committee. It was changed in policy committee and then updated in the program of study. So really, if there are any concerns related to the policy, it doesn't, live in the booklet. With the change in the booklet, it would be going to the root and updating or revising the actual policy. And I have maybe 30 plus or 34 plus more policy, 35, thank you, Dr. Yeager, policies coming forward. And I think that a lot of those impact high school, and I think we will have an opportunity to revise those. And if they are revised in policy, then we will update the program of study booklet to reflect that update.
Okay.
And I appreciate those questions because I was a little confused. I had to get clarity. I said, so really, we're approving the graduation requirements, not really the courses, but the graduation requirements. And I think you said that was correct. Is that right, Mr. Gaskins?
Yes.
What you're saying is everything else in this handbook can be amended in future periods if policies change from the policy committee.
If policies change, or if there is an operating guideline that Dr. Thomas asks us to change, we can always update it. I don't know the historical background of the booklet. It is my assumption that this was a policy to make sure that parents didn't have to dig through the policy manual, so they knew the policies related to high school. And so it would have been nice, in my opinion, and I don't want to be critical of any past leadership, if we just had done that and not attached a policy to actually creating a booklet. I think a booklet is great for parents to have, but because it lives in policy, we have to vote on it. Okay. So I think we can do everything that parents need in informing them about courses and dual enrollment and counseling without having that policy. And then it makes it easier for us to revise and update as needed. But if we want to update anything in the program of study that is a policy, it lives in the policy committee and not in the booklet itself.
Understood.
So I'm going to keep beating the dead horse to make sure that I understand. So in terms of what we're considering a policy, how we calculate honor graduates, is that operational or is that a policy?
That is a policy. That is policy IHF. So we have defined 90 or above as honor graduates. Policy could change that. Okay.
And how we add 10 grade points for AP classes or dual or operational?
That is a state policy.
Okay. And things like the internship being aligned with the Young Dogs program, that's policy or operational. And I'm only asking because if these are policies, I'm more than happy to raise them and bring them up to the policy committee. But I just want to be clear on what is within the policy committee's purview and the board purview and what is operational, so that if there are concerns, I can address them in the proper form.
So Young Dogs is a perfect example, Ms. Hull, and I share the same concern as you. So I've talked to our work-based learning coordinator, as well as our coordinator of gifted and advanced. The only current internship that we have for internship for is Young Dogs. My gifted coordinator brought that to my attention a while ago because we're not serving enough students because they serve our surrounding areas as well. So part of her performance goal is to expand the number of internships that we have in addition to Young Dogs. I think Young Dogs, I don't want to misspeak, but it's a low number of students that they serve in our district because they serve them in all the other districts, and we just need other options for our kids. But that is operational, but I agree we have to expand that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Gaston, would there be a timeline for changing this? Because this is a printed manual, right? Like, is this printed for the year for a set time? And if policies are changed, would it go into effect the next programming year? How does it work if the policy changes within the course of a year?
So we print it upon request. We post it, and when we have updates, we send out notification that there is an update so parents are aware. So I do anticipate updating the program of study. Cedar Shoals has reached out around a dramatic writing course that we have to wait for the teacher to be certified. So once she is certified, then we would update it, and then we would make people aware that that course is also available for students. So we don't print it. We don't print hundreds and thousands of copies as we've done in the past. We make some hard copies available for parents. But when we make a change, we update the school, and then the school communicates to their counseling department.
That just made me think of something. So if you do update it after people have sort of already started down their path of doing all of these things, is it more likely that you would update it to add something that was a new option? Like, would it ever be the case that something somebody had already taken would be taken off of this? Or
It would be an add or a substitution. So for example, dramatic writing could be a required course instead of taking British Lit or multicultural education. So students would have to not, retake any courses that they've already taken. It would just be more options. We would never take away, we would just add.
So you're saying during the school year, we wouldn't take away? I thought I've experienced us taking things away because there was no interest in the course.
Not a required course. So if there's an elective that someone is not taking, as you can see, students have to take 4 units of electives. So we would never say take away 9th grade lit because all kids are required to take 9th grade lit. We would never take a course that is required for graduation.
And so I know that, are there some standards that these requirements are connected to? I know we've got state standards, right, in terms of being comparable with other school districts, but do they also bring weight to our accreditation status as well?
Yes, so we follow all state standards and all College Board standards. So for the AP classes, College Board puts out those standards, and anything that is not an AP course is a approved Georgia DOE course that has standards attached to it.
Okay. I like the fact that it exists simply because of the transparency, and parents can know, especially homeschoolers. I think the only time I've had anybody speak to me about the program of study is homeschoolers who were thinking about coming back into the school system and vice versa.
And just to be clear, this is the one section that is being approved, but we don't take the catalog itself to print until closer to summer. Isn't that correct, Mr. Gaskins? So there's time for some of these changes in the policies that are going before the board now to be addressed closer to time. So the only thing that we're approving would be the high school graduation requirements, but the book itself is not being published or won't go to print for a while.
Great.
So will that mean I actually make a motion to vote only on approving page 7 of the booklet?
We could, and I think that would be fine. We provide the booklet for conferencing. So we have advisement coming up so they can have a list of the course. There are components of the booklet that are definitely up for revision. We have 35, instructional policies coming forward. Our counselors do use the booklet to help students understand the courses. And they're a little hesitant to do that unless it is board approved. But I mean, we can work through that. It's at the will of the board. But as Dr. Thomas said, we always have an opportunity to update the booklet.
Okay.
I have a question. So how often is this updated?
We update it every year.
Okay, and then this particular page, so saying in 3 years we move from block scheduling, does this page change?
It may, probably not, because we've modeled this page from the state expectation. So we had a different course of study when we were on a traditional block, and actually our Classic City students were earning more credits than our 2 comprehensive high schools. So we tried to give more alignment. So if we do change a scheduling method, then these requirements won't have to all of a sudden change.
Okay, and I want to go back to something you said earlier about potentially offering courses this summer for students to move ahead, potentially. How does that impact this, like going into the next school year, or it doesn't?
It doesn't. Students just earn more credits. All of the courses that are approved that they can take are in this program of study. And so they would some students earn more credits. Some students get to their senior year and we have a policy around a reduced schedule. So I do those every 10 today. So when students accelerate, sometimes they get to their senior year and then just ask for a reduced schedule. So instead of having 4 classes in a semester, they may have 3.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I am going to open the floor for a motion to approve this program of study.
I move that we adopt the high school graduation requirements, specifically page 7 of the program of study booklet 2021 to 2022 only.
Okay. So there's a motion to adopt, what page was that, Ms. Hall?
Page 7.
Okay, page.
I second that.
Okay, Ms. Gallagher, I'm gonna open up the floor for additional comments. And out of order, if you don't mind if I start. I normally try to wait until the end. I do think that there's a lot of policy work here. I know that, I think Dr. Anderson, myself, and Mr. Gaskins, this was assigned to us from Dr. Yeager and Mr. Harris, I think. But I am going to caution against making any last minute changes or motions. I do certainly, the right for everyone to make motions and share their opinions. But I do think there is 2 concerns that I have. One, that we've had this program of study for a while. And so I do think the opportunity has existed to have these particular conversations. Also think we've had work to me that would have been an ideal time to begin to either share those concerns or even before work session. And then secondly, I think that if in fact we do have the opportunity to change policies as we go throughout, then it's, if there are changes that are made, technically it's never going to be complete, and so it's sort of, I see it as a fluid document minus what the state requires. And so removing the policies doesn't necessarily address, the problem, because even as we hammer out policies, we may not complete all of those policies. And so I don't think that having a motion to adopt only part of this booklet, when I think there are other ways that this can be resolved and updated, I don't think that I could support that. I want to open the floor for other comments, though.
And I think that could be fair, but in all transparency, I have a 9th grader and I've never seen a program of study. And so the dynamic of saying that it will trickle down to the parents or it's given to the schools, that's not my experience. And I think that there are problems in the policies, and once they are adopted, if that doesn't come to the forefront of what we do this summer or when the academic year starts, those students are stuck with those policies. And I think that, we have had the program of study for a while, and there has been the opportunity to have conversations, but that just means that it's been inequitable for a while. It's been a problem for a while, and we haven't really addressed it. So, there are certain parts of that certainly make sense to be able to discuss, like what a course description is. But there are some policies in there that I think we really need to revisit before we put a vote on them. I think that going forward, if I were very selfish, my children will be okay. Looking at this program of study, I can guarantee that each one of my boys would be an honor graduate, just based on how we calculate that. But that's not fair to everybody else. Everybody doesn't get an opportunity to have an internship. Everybody doesn't get an opportunity to have a work study program. And that reeks of privilege and inequity. And I don't want to, I personally do on something like that until it's addressed. And so if we need to have a program of study to have our students be able to be advised, let's vote on that. But if our booklet is incomplete, if we need to rework stuff, I don't see the point of voting on it, going to rehash it and then voting on it again. That's just my opinion. I respect the board's opinions, but there were some strong concerns within that booklet that I have a problem with. So I'll get off my soapbox right now.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Just to clarify, Mr. Gaskins, and Dr. Yeager, these policies will continue to exist.
They
Whether
will continue to
printed or
exist.
not, until they come before policy and then go up to the full, they're recommended to go before the full board, whether they're printed or not.
That's correct.
Okay.
And they're on the agenda for next month. So it's not like this is going to happen in August or September. It's going to happen next month.
Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I want to express kind of a support of your concern, Dr. Gant. Having been a counselor, I think Mr. Gaskins is right. I would hate to be in a position of trying to direct students out a lot of the detail that is in policy and expressed in this booklet. And I do appreciate the fact that Dr. Yeager and the policy committee are planning to move quickly on these policies, but we're talking about, even if you were to fix 35 policies, or if there were like 10 policies that focused on, that may take 2, 3, 4 months. And I just feel like that the counselors need guidance according to what is in policy. Now, if there's something in particular that is not policy, that is from the administration, then that's an easy fix. But if it's actually in policy and it's just expressed here for the guidance department, I just don't know where we would leave counselors with a page and then maybe course descriptions, which I'm assuming you would, that your motion would include the course descriptions themselves, but there's still a lot more information in there that I don't know where that leaves our counseling staff.
So if I can better understand, since you guys have experience with this, my question is, these policies that define the programs that get the 10 points and those things, are you saying that they're not captured anyplace else except in the program of studies?
They're captured, in some cases, they're captured in our CCSD policy, and in other cases, they're captured in our state policy, or both. And so I think, not having historical knowledge, what the program of study booklet attempted to do was to summarize all policies in one place. And so parents and counselors would not have to go look for them. They would all be in the booklet.
I like the transparency in that notion, and so therefore I do like having it in one place. But I think that is also a good place that we're jumping off from too. I'm inclined to recognize the inequities that you're describing. I've never visited this document before. Just read it and said, okay, these are the courses, and tried to remember what they were like when I was in high school. And that was the extent of it. But if we have already been made aware of inequities based on these policies that we have, for us to vote to continue doing that just seems like a great disservice to our students. And if we have a way to satisfy the need to approve just the, which part of it, the one page that we have to do every year, then I certainly support Ms. Hull's conclusion is that she's taken it apart and she knows which ones are problematic. Then why wouldn't we approve just those pages that are critical for moving forward and satisfying some other requirement? I can't remember what we have to do. I think it's, I don't know if that's state requirement or not. But then to leave the rest of that in state of review, because we have not revisited it as a result of our charter system. And of course, there are things we can't waive, but then if there are other things that are arbitrary now because we operate in a different environment, then I would say let's revisit those before we publish them again. Or at least put a disclaimer under those where we're not committing to doing those things.
But just because we don't publish them, Linda, doesn't, I mean, in this booklet, doesn't mean that they're not valid. I mean,
I'm just saying I'm saying add an under review or something like that so that people don't, we're not voting to continue doing something that we know is discriminatory. I have a problem with that.
I also agree with that. That's why I guess my question before was like, you know, in terms of like, do we have to approve this right now? Like if we're working on these policies next week, is there a further date that we could work through this to have a booklet? I just get changing the booklet. I know you said we can add stuff throughout, but I can see when people pick up the booklet at the beginning of the year and then they want to make a change. I just see that for me that's problematic. And like, can we? That's why I asked. Like, is this you know, if we did it once a year, we go ahead and work through these changes. I would feel more. I don't feel like it's fair knowing that this is, you know, we're discussing this and that we just keep moving with it.
Well, I've got a
May
proposal.
I add that if we put it, so I do think there could be some, you know, a compromise could be maybe to put it later, but I also think it's unrealistic to think that we are going to get through, how many policies, Dr. Yeager, Gaskins? Is that
35.
35. I just think we have to take a big look at how we spend time in policy, how we spend time in work session. And I don't think it's realistic to think that we're gonna have those policies reviewed at least to the satisfaction we're going, like with our strategic plan. I mean, now, sure, we could like, you know, sort of rush through them, you know, and say, okay, this is our target date. And I don't know what the latest is that we could have those updated. I don't know what the goal is for printing. But, you know, I think we also have to just keep in mind that talking about taking this through policy committee, and it will be taken through policy committee. I don't think it's realistic that we'll have those policies done, particularly if that goal is within like the next 2 months to have all of those policies reviewed. These are things that don't just rest with the board, rest with teachers, with principals, with parents and stakeholders. And so it's not about just, you know, what we want and what's great for our children. You know, I would imagine it's a process. We wouldn't just be in a room changing these things. And so we'll get input from the board, I mean, from the community. There may be some things that the community parents may be more aware of that they share with us. And so just wanted to make the point that it could very well be a process that, you know, that takes place over the next several months. And again, that these policies exist, whether they're in the book or not.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that for myself. I totally understand the hesitation and not wanting to have things that we don't agree with. But they'll still be in policy. So if we don't approve the rest of the booklet, if people want to know the answers to some of these things, we're just making it harder for them to find the current policies. Is that accurate? I mean, if they want to know, like, I need more information on this, the booklet is trying to provide that information all in one place, but the information exists whether it's in the booklet or not, and now they're just going to have to go search for it somewhere else.
Is it possible that we could reach some type of understanding that it's only out there electronically until August? I mean, I understand about not wanting to print stuff, you know, I can get that, but I just don't know to tell counselors, this is the program of study. Any other questions, go read the policy manual for the Clark County School District. Doesn't seem very viable to me.
Just don't see how, knowing that there are policies that are not fair to our benefit the children of CCSD, to put them out there. We're essentially saying we need to give counselors directives to be able to go and advise students within equitable policies. So if you are on in the population or the student population that doesn't benefit that are on the books, we'll get to you in August. And so I am okay if we call a vote and the motion fails, but I in good conscience can't say I have issues with the policies and we need to put it forth anyway. That just doesn't feel like I'm doing my job here on the school board. Y'all call a vote because it's getting late and I'm okay with that.
It is getting late. Before we open the floor for a motion, I think, oh no, we have a motion, we have a second. Before we close out the discussion, Dr. Thomas and Mr. Gaskins, are there any last minute comments?
I just want to remind us that really, I totally understand all the discussion and feel equally passionate about some parts of what's been said, that we will continue working on the policy and on components of the handbook, and that the part that will be final tonight is a part that I don't think people are in disagreement with, and that is the number of units that are required for a student to graduate is essentially what we're discussing. And I know that the issue might be pulling it off and just voting on it by itself and how that's worded, but just know that regardless of how this vote turns out, the discussion will continue to happen around the policy. And we do have time to address some of those issues. Some of them we won't be able to fix by June. We won't be able to fix maybe by the beginning of the school year, because some things are pretty deep rooted. And when you start talking about dismantling systems and dismantling equities, unfortunately, some of that takes time, but it's a work that I think we're all committed to. And so I just want us to remember that we are still talking about page 7, as Attorney Hull has said, but that, you know, this is going to be work. As you said, Dr. Gann, it's a process, and we can't rush through it and do it well. So I just don't want anyone to think that the vote tonight solidifies the document as a whole and our work toward making these improvements. Our work in this area does not stop, and will be next week in policy, and we will continue the work.
Can I make one more
Thank you.
suggestion?
Quickly, please.
Very quickly. Can we do the approval of the graduation requirements page, right? And then everything else just be labeled tentative, because it's under review. And again,
Is that a substitute motion? I think the motion on the floor, Ms. Hall, could you clarify again? My memory is failing me. The motion on the floor, page 7, right?
Yes, so that sounds like a friendly amendment that I would welcome. But yes, the motion on the floor was to vote specifically on the high school graduation requirements that are articulated in page 7 of the program of study for 2021-2022.
Okay, and Ms. Davis, state what you said again, just so we can.
My friendly amendment is everything else in the booklet be labeled under review or tentative, or a disclaimer that says, we understand that you need this, but it will be changing potentially.
Okay, and Mr. Pruitt, does that sort of sounds like to me as a substitute motion, because it's sort of a different thing than page 7. I think I understand you saying, Ms. Davis, that your amendment would be to keep all of it, but put tentative on all of the other pages, or am I misunderstanding that?
That's exactly right. And it doesn't have to be the word tentative. It can be whatever word describes the fact that it's under revision and under review. But to let people know that this will be changing, perhaps.
Yeah, that's a substitute motion.
Then I
Okay.
make a substitute motion.
Okay, and okay, substitute motion on the floor, so that we would need a second to that substitute motion, is that correct?
So can I second her motion without having to withdraw my own under Robert's rules?
You can second that one, and if it passes, then that wipes out the first motion, and that's what we have.
So I second that motion, the substitute motion.
Okay, all right, and for the record, is there any further discussion or clarification on that substitute motion, which is to have the booklet and have under review in the necessary areas?
I just want to make sure I understand. Are we saying that the definition for pre-calculus, the description of pre-calculus is tentative? I mean, because pre-calculus as described is pre-calculus, or is that just assumed to be part of page? Because it is part of page 7 in a kind of way. But are we talking about changing or altering course descriptions as tentative?
No, just those things that we know policies have to be revisited on.
Okay.
Okay, and Mr. Just a point of clarification or understanding on the substitute motion, Mr. Gaskins and Dr. Thomas, what does that mean by for you all? Because I understand that this is work that you all will need to do, and you will have to do. And I don't know your timeline. For instance, I don't know who all is required, right? If you need to reach out to counselors, high school principals, and things like that. So I guess my vote really depends on if this is something that's feasible for you all, especially since these policies will continue to exist, and technically all policies are subject to review.
Mr. Gaskins? I know we're both so lost now. We're like, we don't even know what the vote is on anymore.
I think
right now, the motion, we have a substitute motion, and the substitute motion on the floor was made by, I think, Ms. Davis, and seconded by Ms. Hull. And it is to keep keep the current booklet as is, to take action on it. However, the areas that may change, so policy references, to make a note somewhere that policies are under review.
I think that would be good, Mr. Gaskins. I'll let you speak, but one of the things that Mr. Harris brought up, so I think this is good, and Attorney Pruitt, you can speak to this, was that it probably is best to do it this way because the program of study is a repository of regulations. And so based on our own policy, BDC, we would need to approve the thing in its entirety, but then making notes to come back and address those policies. So I think the substitute motion would address that and keep us from the policy. I hope that made sense.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
The
And
work
that's why
that's left is for Mr. Gaskins or someone to identify which pages describe board policy and put the under review label on them.
And I wasn't trying to put the wording out there, because if that's not the right wording, or the word under review doesn't meet your needs, then find the right words. But we just need to make sure that we are saying we are not voting for this particular thing to go forward without some other things
Right,
happening.
yes. I think that captured the spirit of what, does that get it, Attorney Hull? Okay.
Okay, I just want to check in to be sure. Are there any other questions for clarification or discussions around this substitute motion?
I just need clarification. So we're talking about anything in this booklet that is tied back to a policy, do want to review, then it will somehow or the other specify that in the booklet. So that, and actually could be a guide to board members who are not on the policy committee exactly what is being reviewed by the policy committee. But is that correct?
That's only a part of it. The other part of it is the reason some of these policies aren't, some of the policies are not equitable, is what I heard Attorney Hull say. And so those are the ones that we're talking about reviewing or making a change to. So it's not just that we're going to review the policies, it's just that there's discrimination evident in the policies that we have put in this book, and we're going to correct that.
Well,
That-
let me
that's the
just-
reason.
let me-
That's not part of the motion. Let's not make Mr.
Right.
Gaskins figure
Well,
out which
not-
ones he thinks are equitable or not.
Right, and let me just add that, Dr. Yeager, if I'm not mistaken, all of the, or Mr. Gaskins, all of the policies, or at least the I policies, I think. Is it the I policies that we did?
Yes.
Those would be up for review, and I just want to be, careful. I know we all have our, own opinions, but that's a person's opinion that there's alleged discrimination in the policy. But that is why it takes the entire district and other stakeholders to be able to look at the policies that we have as well, and make modifications based on our strategic plan, as well as just collaboration with the district.
And our charter system and other things too. So
That's right.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm stuck on the thing that's just bothering me. So I apologize for that.
And Dr.
It's
Gann,
okay.
just as a point of clarification, not all of the I policies are up for revision. I can't remember. There are some that have not been updated in, I think, 10 or more years. I think those are the ones that we tackle, but not all. Just a point of clarification that not all of the I policies are up for revision, but there are a lot that are up for revision.
Okay.
All right, thank you for that clarification and all of the comments that have been shared. We have our substitute motion. We've had discussion. Dr. T would take roll on all in favor of the substitute motion of adopting this, is it program of study? I'm sorry, I just moved the.
Yes, ma'am.
The program of study with it being indicated in the relevant places that certain policies are under review.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you. So that motion passes, and we will move forward with item 12.3, and that's a resolution calling for the state of Georgia to prioritize teachers, bus drivers, school, and district staff for COVID-19 vaccinations by moving them up to Tier 1A. Just going to open the floor for discussion first, and then we'll open the floor for a motion.
Aren't we in Tier 1A plus? Is that relevant?
So actually,
We are. The last thing I read, sorry.
okay. And so that we would have to be sure we remember that in the motion. Mr. Davis, I think you.
Yeah.
I
I thought we were in one, I thought educators were in 1B. So you're saying it's 1A plus?
Educators right now are 1B, and we are currently giving vaccines to 1A plus. They expanded 1A beyond medical workers to include 65 and older.
Okay.
So
So
1A
that's
plus.
I'm the plus.
You are the plus. Yep.
Yeah, so we can, okay, well, we can certainly make that adjustment. My whole thing about this is that and I may be the only one on the board that has been fully vaccinated. And that's what really sparked this in me, because if I could have in my position to an educator who was actually looking forward to going into the classroom under a vaccination, I would have done so. But there's no vehicle for that. And so because I'm retired and I'm stuck at home. I mean, and that's what I'm going to do is stick at home. So the idea for this came from the Atlanta schools on February 1st, and I sent a copy of that earlier, their resolution, and they passed a resolution And again, there was some discussion about where it's being made, and the decision is being made in the governor's office. The number of vaccines that are available in the state of Georgia is being made on the federal level. But in terms of who gets prioritized with the vaccination, that is the governor's decision. And there's been a good amount of talk within GAE, Georgia Education Association, of pushing for teachers and school staff being vaccinated, moving up the line, and so that's what this does. And so I won't read it, but we are asking the governor to we're throwing our weight on the fact that we would like our teachers and bus drivers and school and district staff to be vaccinated. That's the resolution.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. Questions, comments? Okay.
I was just checking to see where we are on that, and I did a quick search, and 11 Alive reported that Kemp said that the current vaccine supply is not enough right now, but if we got a greater supply, he would do that.
This is Dr. Watley. I did speak to Nurse Rourke today, and she is partnering with the Department of Public Health, and they are working on fulfilling our vaccination efforts in CCSD. So that's still in the works as well. But once we have an update, I'll be sure to let everyone know.
Awesome.
Thank you for that, Dr. Watley. Other. Okay. Dr. Thomas, I'm sorry, that was discussion. I'm going to open the floor for a motion.
I move that this resolution be adopted by the Clark County School Board, a resolution calling for state to prioritize teachers, bus drivers, school and district staff for the COVID-19 vaccinations.
Second. Sorry, that was me.
Okay. So Mr. Davis made the motion, Dr. Yeager made a second, and just to clarify, would we be correcting that tier 1A plus? Right, okay, that's just a grammatical, well, actually.
An edit.
This is, yes, an edit. So it's not, okay. For the record, are there any additional comments and questions? Okay. Dr. Thomas, if you would call roll for all of those of adopting the current resolution.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher? Question. Ms. Gallagher? Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Yeager?
Yes.
Dr. Deitman? Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Gant?
Yes.
Attorney Hull?
Yes.
Dr. Maddox?
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher?
She may have
Not
got,
present right now.
Okay.
okay, I don't see her on the screen. Right. So that motion passes and that resolution is adopted. We'll move forward to item number 13 and 13.
I so moved.
Okay. All right. So that was Ms. Davis' motion to adjourn, and was that Ms. Hull?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Hull for the second. I don't see any objections or hear any objections. And so we are adjourned at 9:40 p.m.
Stay safe.
Thank
Great
you all.
evening, everyone. Take care.
Bye.